Hi, everyone, and this is John Sneisen from the Economic Truth Report. And today, this is our 28th report today, and we're looking forward to have a great guy on our chat today. He has over 2 decades in profession as a professional programmer, like 23 years, and he started when he was 15. He's been active in participating in cryptocurrencies, witnessing firsthand the evolution of and innovation of the changes in the blockchain and crypto space itself. For more than 2 decades, of course, he has been dedicated as a developer engaging in complex projects. In 2010, he entered into the crypto space, and for over 10 years, he has been a phenomenal evolution. He's watched a phenomenal evolution of the technology and its significant changes and developments. His experience has been as a keen observer, and I talked to James before, and I consider him an expert in his field. So, good to have you on, James.
Oh, thanks very much, John.
Yeah. So let's get into it here. Like we had a good conversation, a couple of good conversations before, and I think
Oh,
we're
yeah.
pretty similar in our views and thoughts about our great world that we live in here. So we're gonna start a little bit with, I think, with some of the more important things that especially now it's very much front and center is artificial intelligence. And
Oh,
so we're
absolutely.
going to talk about crypto, of course, as
Mm.
well. But I think that the AI and what's going on with artificial intelligence right now is quite interesting. There's a lot of hype about it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of interesting things going on. Some people say that, experts that have come out like from Google and other places have said like, oh yeah, like it's becoming conscious. We need to stop this right now. You have like a big call for regulator. You had Sam Altman actually participating in the Bilderberg meetings in Lisbon this year. So that was quite
Yeah.
interesting. And so there's a lot of development, and there's a lot of both hype and worries. We got guys like Elon Musk saying that maybe we'll have Skynet if we keep on going down this road. So it'd be very interesting to let's hear a little bit about some development, because you're very connected with people that are highly and deeply into the artificial intelligence sector. So let's talk a little bit about that and what you see and what you heard and so on.
Well, in terms of stopping development of AI, it's just not going to happen. Um, Remember the old story about a famous king? He wanted to try and stop the sea from, and he commanded it to go back, and it wouldn't do it. It's just not going to happen. Regulation and technology really don't mix. It never ever pans out, and it usually goes worse than they think. You've got the national projects, I think. Like if we tried to stop it in the West and everybody got together and said, "Yeah, we're going to stop AI," well, China, India, and other nations are just going to develop there, and all our best developers are just going to end up working through those
Yeah.
meteorites. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. If they put laws out globally and said we're going to stop AI, then it's just going to be developed on the black market and on the dark net. You can't really stop it. And what we're looking at the moment is our chip manufacturers. I'm not trying not to name any names. Are they going to build in things that are going to try and circumvent AI? Well, that can easily be undone. You can just make sure the chips are wiped, and you can download other drivers and sources for to run them. So I'm not really concerned. I'm concerned that they might try and make it more awkward for legitimate developers um, to stop doing the work. Then that would be my only concern. But AI is just going to keep getting not better and better. It's going to hit a plateau. And then this is what I've seen throughout the years, because I wasn't a big believer in AI when I first saw it. I was just like, this is just a waste of time and resources. But then I actually saw things like GTP and GPT, I mean,
Yeah.
and would it made these big leaps. It plateaus and then makes another leap again and then plateaus. But that's just the cycle of development. So yeah, I think everyone's getting interested into it now. It's now going to a phase where people can see how can we use this. How can I integrate this in my business, or how can I integrate this into a product? So the biggest adopters are going to be businesses. Yes, there's going to be job losses. There's going to be significant amount of job losses, but this always happens. If you look back in the 1950s, particularly in Britain, they used to have Pippin colleges where you teaching people how to type, and you'd instead of having a printer, they'd have a big room full of secretaries all typing away, and that's been replaced by one little device that can fit in the
Well,
corner.
sorry to interrupt you there, but I'll tell a funny story about my dad was right, left, right, and center in that. He went to as a corporal into the military, and when he
Mm.
got out of the training, he was supposed to go on a boat and become a like he was supposed to learn how to. No, he was learning how to send out Morse signals, but then that got replaced by radio. Like telegraph
Exactly.
got replaced by radio. So sorry to interrupt you there, but funny story, anyways.
No, no, absolutely. Honestly, AI is only limited by your imagination, and unfortunately, if you're one of those people who's just taking part of the process that's probably going to get replaced in 6 months by a machine, then yeah, it'd be best to just dive on board and learn how to adapt to AI.
Yeah. So
But
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, one of the fascinating things is I was actually looking at it being integrated into computer aided design, which was incredible. So instead of somebody sitting there with a mouse trying to adjust little parts of it, they've now got the AI system going out and going, this is the optimal shape for the problem, and it's generating components that is just phenomenal,
Oh,
and
really?
it's
Very interesting.
breathtaking every day. It's just wow, what have they done with it today?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it
So
does it's not that complicated to integrate AI into any either software or system. It's getting easier and easier to integrate.
hmm so like, where would you say like, so from your point of view, like how much are you using AI right now, like to benefit yourself and in your business, right, as developer?
Oh, not giving any trade secrets away there,
No.
but I'm terribly dyslexic, and trying to type out a coherent sentence is pretty difficult for me actually. Getting that sort of coherence. So I've been just using AI for emails and making it sound more professional,
Yeah.
and writing scripts. In fact, even the bio that I gave you today was AI written. So
No, it's really fantastic because I've used AI for a while. I used Grammarly, like when
yeah,
it started to, and that's like far back. Like I remember when I started using it, it was really terrible, but it's become
mm,
like pretty like crazy good at like actually like helping you like phrase the sentence in the best possible way and in certain tones and so on. And that's of course what ChatGPT as well is doing, right? But it become as you said, with current AI, like the machine learning types of AIs, you hit that plateau, right? Like
mm,
pretty quickly. But that plateau is like way above what we, have expected,
yeah,
of course, because the more inputs an AI has, like tell me if I'm wrong here, but the more
yeah,
inputs and data an AI has, the crazier, like you basically are adding to your intelligence right now and the
yeah.
capability of
It's
actually putting together and making sense of things. Because yes, when I do research, I do a lot of research, but it takes me, days, weeks, months, to run through all the data. But then when you go, the problem with, of course, with ChatGPT and stuff like that is it's biased, and it's telling me. I asked it, "Are you
mm.
biased?" And of course, it said like, not necessarily, but like the developers and others' thoughts, are biased. So basically told me,
Anything developed
yeah,
by a
yeah,
human being is going to be biased.
yeah, 100%, right? So,
Yeah.
it can, take out that and so on. But I think let's get into this because I know you mentioned it to me is the future of AI. There's two ways this can go, and a lot of technologies are like this. It could go like look at what happening with crypto. With the central banks. You have the good side of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that are
I
trying to
can't
have
wait
a
for
free
this
market.
particular conversation.
Yeah, and then you got CBDC, being the evil side of crypto, right? So the
Yeah.
same thing I think is developing, and it's interesting because I remember watching. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Jack's Fresco, like the Venus Project. He was talking about. I think like 10 years ago, I bumped into his ideas of his utopian society where everything's going
Yeah.
to be run by AI and it's going to tell us what to do, kind of thing. And
Mm.
like it was supposed to be in a good way, nobody's really doing anything anymore.
Mm.
But
That's the thing. A lot of jobs,
yeah.
people don't realize they can be replaced. And it's going to make even your personal life much more efficient. And like, imagine being able to type in your schedule and have AI work out what's the most efficient way of doing things. That would be incredible.
Yeah, because
And
that takes a lot of time and reading to get to
mm,
those conclusions today.
oh yeah, and I think it's going to make society a lot more efficient. And but there's just long debate is how many people are going to be left by the wayside because they are replaceable.
Yeah,
And I think
and if you're not using it too, right? Like
mm,
there's going to be a huge information technology deficit here as well.
yeah.
You know, we get almost like are we going to end up with an underclass here of people
Mm,
that are totally in the dark, or people that just don't want to use technology at all? Because I see like a lot of people are just moving out on the countryside and getting away from
mm.
everything because they're fed up with technology. But what is your thoughts on, so we're heading there, but let's talk. Yeah, I kind of got sidetracked there, but let's talk about the two things that are the evil and the good of AI, right? So, like, there's now moves, and we talked about this. I think it's called Banana or something. I think you called it,
Yes,
where
I mentioned
there's
banana too.
decentralized AI, which
Yeah.
actually people could have AI in their own home and use it for their advantage if you don't want to do
Yeah.
research and
Banana is
that's
a hosted service. It allows you to deploy
yeah.
various AI models at the click of a finger. And the one drawback of AI is it's so processor intensive. To run something like ChatGTP or have a service like ChatGTP, you're going to need a lot of computing power, and that's going to be incredibly expensive. Banana has managed to do it in such a way where you're only paying per instance of one using your model, but per prompt as well. So you pay like a thousandth or a couple of thousandth of a penny per unit that you're using. So per when you put a prompt in, you might be drawing off hundreds of different computers, but you're only paying for that fraction of a second where it's used. So it comes in a very small amount.
So
So
the
the light,
Yeah, so the
it's
idea
like,
here is, let's say that you have a lot of data that you
mm,
want to sift through, right?
yeah,
How can you use models like that for your benefit to then pull from that data and get quicker answers, than having to do your research in, like months or years at a time, right? Instead of like you would be able to potentially,
yeah.
do quicker. How can people like the peasant of the world, like how
Yeah,
could they actually be able to deploy that?
well, you could use some services similar to GPT, but if you wanted something a bit more in-house, then you could use something like Banana. You would have to have some scripting knowledge, but you can get a developer pretty easily these days. Um, and you could develop your own script and then use some of the models via Banana. And they have several ones. There's one called Dolly that's an
Yeah,
imaging
and
one. Let me
it's
just look
not
on that.
DALL-E, right? Like it's not
No,
DALL-E,
it's not
it's
Dolly. It's
Dolly, right?
Dolly
Yeah.
D O
Yep.
L Y.
Yep.
And let me just load up banana.dev on here. And that's one. I'm dyslexic. I don't know how to spell banana.
But now you
There we are.
do. You got the AI on your side.
I've got my AI on my side.
Yeah.
I'll actually be showing later. I've got a video to show you of how programmatically they actually calculate sentiment. Like, so they can actually read the mind of the person typing a post and say, right, this person's in a bad mood, this person isn't, or this might be insightful. And there's
Yeah,
actually
so
models.
I'm looking very much forward to that, by the way. And people, if you are aware of, what Facebook and Twitter and others are doing, they're using algorithms to rate your content up and down. And this is
Oh
like the
yeah,
type. It's not exactly, but it's the way and type of actually like how they then could, say like, oh no, this is pretty bad, or they could find keywords, right, or something in there that they don't like, and then they just shove your content all the way to the bottom, and it will never be found.
yeah. The only reason we're seeing things like this now is because we're allowed to.
Yeah.
There is sort of quite a tight grip by the regulator, and I've seen this in my own personal, not personal life, but for our business. I've seen really good software that was available to the public, but for only a limit. But then all of a sudden, it just disappeared off the market.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was only on for weeks, and all of a sudden, it's gone. I'm like, That was like a multi-billion-pound product. Where did it go? And it's not you never heard from the developers again, but we didn't know who they were.
Maybe
And
somebody paid them some good money to do something with it.
yeah, yeah, I think yeah, I was just looking up
Yeah.
an article at the moment, and they have GPT.jt. That appears to be a new one. I haven't seen that one before. And there's several models here, like Tortoise, Instructor, Pix to Pix, Open Journey as well, Flan 5. And these are all models you can implement at the click of two buttons. I think it's two or three buttons, and then you all of a sudden can integrate AI engines into your product. So for your NFT developers out there, you can just tell it to generate 10,000 images based on whatever, and then there you have it. And it's not anywhere near the price of DALL-E.
Really? Yeah. So it basically can
Mm.
generate things like 100 times quicker than a lot of people are able to do. If they were to
Oh
build
yeah,
it, like yeah, exactly. And so how is it for you're a programmer, and
yeah.
how is
Oh,
it for?
really simple to use. Actually, I've seen this a couple of times. You just make a HTML form, download, and you then have to just use the generate a HTML form and a script, a JavaScript, PHP, something of that nature, Python. You can even run it on the desktop via C or anything else really. And you just take the API codes and it gives you a callback, and you just send the information gets sent to the engine or the model, and then a couple of seconds later it comes back.
Mhm.
I mean, there
So
are a few bugs flying out, but it's relatively simple.
yeah, is there models out there right now that you could actually? So I'm into macroeconomics. Like, is there a model that I
Hmm.
could pull, like basically use data from a website that's available on a website, and then try to ask questions about it or create charts or anything? Like, is there anything that I got
Yeah,
that
you
far
could
yet?
use GPT for things like that, quite simply, because with your more open source GPT via Tortoise, not Tortoise, via Banana, you can actually upload CSV files and spreadsheets to
Oh,
it. Yeah, it's going to. I'm not sure how much it will cost per minute to use that, but you can upload spreadsheets and get it to even write scripts for you for those spreadsheets. And you can
interesting.
upload, yeah, you upload Excel, get it to, and then ask it questions as well. So, but be aware that your prompt might be detecting your own biases in it. But get it to write an unbiased process and say, is this, what's the most likelihood? And get it to draw. You can even draw you a graph as well if you integrate an image model in there.
Oh yeah. So like this could get pretty insane pretty quickly.
That's exactly what's going
Yeah.
to happen. I might think the governments have jumped on this so quickly. So they have people in not saying what department, but constantly monitoring the internet for new and emerging threats. And they're not threats to public safety, they're threats to the actual integrity of the government. Is there something, how can they develop procedures to mitigate any of those threats as well? And yeah, I'm just looking. I've been distracted by banana again. I'm sorry about the name of it, but it's one. Imagine
Yeah.
if somebody came up to you 40 years ago and said, "There's going to be something out there that can answer any question you want. What are we going to call it? Let's call it Google." Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good name, but some of the stupidest named sites have got some of the best.
Yeah.
Have got some of the best
It's
best
gonna be the
products out there.
banana. The banana will
Yeah,
answer your questions. Well,
banana.
it's
I think Yeah, I think it's going to be like a Google type. It's going to be up there one day.
so banana will be the new Oracle of Delphi, like the old
Yes.
stories, right? Where basically what it does is that like these models, it just take general knowledge and makes it accessible way
Yes,
faster
it's
than you
already
would
got data
ever.
sets within them, but
Yeah.
you can actually take them and you can download them and host them yourself as well. So this is one of the first places to go if you want to have an in-house um, AI. That
Eh, eh,
because many people are like, I like this, but I'm not willing to put my accounts into this thing in case one day there's a big breach, and that's and these places are going to be targeted by hackers. It's
Yeah.
for what's everyone been typing in, because they're keeping a record, definitely.
Yeah.
And there's people looking at what are people typing in, but
Yeah, and you
there's
can
now
blackmail people too, right? Depending on, what they actually wrote, and so on. So it's like we talked about this. It's like the record keep, like the government wants to keep all the records, with their spy agencies that they have, the NSAs, the
yeah,
CISAs, or whatever. Like in Norway, we got the NSM, and then of course,
yeah.
what
We
is
have
yours in the
GCHQ,
UK? I forgot the UK one now. Yeah,
GCHQ,
GCHQ.
MI5,
Yeah.
MI6.
Yeah, so it's all these intelligence agencies, but what really they are is they just control mechanisms to make sure that the peasants doesn't get out of hand and
I want to. I'm
change.
going to
Yeah,
take it off track here, right? Because one of
sure.
my pet peeves has been for many years you could only have encryption so strong. You couldn't go over 256-bit encryption, and it was like, why not? We want it to be as secure as possible, and it's relatively simple to code in higher levels than that. Well, doesn't that just tell you exactly how strong the government systems are? I mean, so if you're all of a sudden a malactor or somebody who's up to no good, you just know that you've got to have your encryption over 256-bit. I mean, so they've just told everybody how strong the system is. And then all the good guys are going to code to that, and all the bad guys aren't. So that was a good idea.
Yeah, because what's stopping us from having, because now most things, like the highest possible encryption that they allow you is 256, right? Bits. And
Something
like
to manage.
yeah, what is really like limiting you from, having 512, 1024, 248 to
I'm kind of
4056?
concerned about telling you this, but honestly, not that much. I
Yeah,
mean, really, it's dead easy to make something much higher than that. All that bit means, it's just like a chain of random characters.
yeah. So
So
you just got to
it's like,
add to that chain of random characters, basically, like,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, one of the old, oh, sorry, I'll get into trouble. I'm going to say it anyway. But one of the old spy techniques was they'd have a book. They both have the copy of the same book, and they give numbers, which were essentially the character. You go to page 100, then go to line 5, and then the 18th character along. So they'd write out their message. They'd then go along and pick out all these random characters, and then they'd send that to the counterparty, and then the counterparty would have the same book, go along and then just decode it.
yeah,
All that bit encryption means is that they've got a 256 long chain of characters, and it's longer than that, but 256 long characters, and they'd go along picking out those characters. So what's wrong with using like a PDF? So you have a copy of a PDF, I have a copy of a PDF, and then we programmatically say to the software, okay, hi John, how are you? And it would randomly pick all those things, 10
yeah, and
meter,
yeah.
easy enough to do.
Yeah, so it's
And
very, so it's funny how, like, that's like, is that government regulation that have come in there, do you think, or like to stop?
yeah, that was exactly government
Yeah,
regulation that they will get you done for doing something like that.
yeah,
And it's even worse that if somebody does misuse it, then you're culpable to the crime as well.
yeah. Well, it's very very
So
interesting how government regulation always comes in the way to stop, certain technologies, because what government is afraid of is just the peasants, if you can call us that,
mm,
that we would gain enough knowledge that we know that they're up to no good. And we do know that, like, a lot of us are starting to come to that
yeah,
conclusion. But now with these AI systems, you actually could have well, it's biased, a lot of them, but you get like so much more information than somebody would ever have had the dreams of having right in your hands, and you
oh
could
yeah,
you could ask all kinds of questions. Now, I know that we talked about before, and you have, I think, a friend of yours or something are trying to do something using
yeah,
AI to analyze data from like Bloomberg or something like that.
yeah.
I don't know.
That's
Yeah,
what a friend of mine. He's actually using. A lot of places out there now are using AI to analyze it from. You can integrate it into Bloomberg Terminal pretty easily, and yeah. So we were looking at keeping narrowing all the information down for Bloomberg and just saying, okay, where's the market moving? But offsetting that with live market information as
Yeah.
well, just to gain a bit of an advantage. So you can sort of, but this is where one of the sentiment engines comes in, is you can actually find out sentiment within, and somebody's already doing this online, and to do with cryptocurrencies, to say how bearish or how greedy people are in the market and how fearful people are in the market, and using sentiment engines to calculate, okay, today everybody on we do it separately for each engine,
Right.
but you got your Facebook, LinkedIn, and you can even segment it by the professionals on LinkedIn as well. So you can segment it and see, okay, each social media channel
Mhm.
is negative towards cryptocurrency today. That's a good day to buy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you see, in a bull market, everybody's buying, and there's all these videos popping up and buy this, buy that. And look, last week I got it right. Well, yeah, it's a bear market. You can pick most things, and they're just going to go up.
Yeah,
So,
because Yeah, because when you look at markets itself, like I think somebody told me almost 80% of markets are passive, and a lot of that market actually runs on AI, not AI itself, like machine learning type of things where they
oh,
look at certain things and need certain prompts to make certain trades and so on. But
oh yeah,
you know, we're kind of there already, like with the big banks, and then you got I think BlackRock has this like kind of an AI-based system called Aladdin. I don't know if you're too familiar with
I'm not
Aladdin.
familiar with that, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if they invested heavily in the technology
yeah.
and outsourced a lot of it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, exactly. And when I looked at who the World Economic Forum put on as their Young Global Leaders, which is their 5-year program where they take very smart kids and like kids, like we're almost their age, like the limit is 40, but they take
Hmm.
smart people and they take them aboard a 5-year program to then indoctrinate them into, becoming world leaders and running a certain agenda for them. But
Hmm.
it's interesting. A lot of people were AI right now, like that got implemented to this year's class. Last year, I don't think it was maybe one, but this year I think it was 5 or 6 of them from all kinds of like they're not just like from one place in the world. They were from China, they were from U.S., from Europe I think as well. So,
Hmm.
um, but there everybody's looking for an edge, and the way and speed things are happening right now. We had the Ray Kurzweil was talking about the singularity and the
Hmm.
possibility of that happening. Like it seems like more and more obvious that like that might be where this craziness is going to take us, where we're just find technology, especially using AI right now, because it's able to look at complex data that has been collected by humans over such a huge lifespan, and then it could make this like find patterns and so on very quick. It would take a human being probably a decade to go through all the data and sift through it, but it would take seconds for an AI to actually look at all this and then find things that we're doing wrong, things that we're doing very
Hmm.
inefficiently, and all this stuff. So there's a love and hate, of course, relationship with AI, especially when it comes to any religions, would not
Hmm.
want AI to exist because like God is the almighty creator. Like, but
Hmm.
then you hear guys like Klaus Schwab and Noel Harari at the World Economic Forum says like, it's over, like we've hacked human beings.
Yeah.
So,
It's getting that way. I mean, I remember 5, 6 years ago, somebody introduced me to AI, and this is why I wasn't impressed. He tried to get it to play a game of Super Mario where he just had to jump along, and
yeah,
it was spending hours. And everyone was like, "Yeah, I'm not afraid of AI." And then a few years later, it's all of a sudden writing people's theses for them
yeah.
and drawing artwork. What's going to happen now? Everyone's excited into it. Now everybody's money's being pumped into it at an exponential rate. Um, what's it going to be like in another 5 years? I mean, it's every 3 days I see a new project, and I was like, I didn't think of that. That's a
Yeah.
really good use for it. Like somebody's using these AI um, image engines to redesign houses. Somebody was using it to redesign CAD models for components for cars,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and injection molding. And now somebody's using it to re-architect houses. Another
Well,
one's
so
using it for interior design.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I work at electrical company where we also do low voltage. Like think about when you can give it a CAD drawing and then
Hmm.
tell it like it has all the knowledge, like it's learned how you build like your piping and everything. And actually the CAD drawer could take like my buddy is very good. I don't use it much, but my
Yeah,
buddy's really good at it. He makes a drawing within like maybe 2 3 4 days, you know. Well, it could
hmm.
take seconds
Yeah,
potentially to make that CAD drawing if you teach it right, and it could be like, oh, here's new house, here's a new project, you know, like just do this. And then,
yeah,
and then that
exactly.
guy, you know, like lost a lot of his work, and now he has to go out. You still got to go out in the field and install that stuff, but it's you see how it can replace pretty quickly, you know, certain things when it just get
What
involved.
scares me is it's now going to start making its own parts. Just nobody plug in a 3D printer for one of these things because things could get crazy. Right? If it starts making its own tooling um, and its own components, it might even make its own robots that can actually go out and do the job.
Yeah, so like this is interesting part. This is like the Skynet type of part where, you know, what if like it manages to become so smart that it would be like, maybe I should just hack certain systems and create my own things, then and then create malicious intent into some of these things.
See,
You know,
if
does it sound familiar, you know, with Skynet where they
it
just
isn't
put
actually
in, yeah,
thinking, it's only responding at the moment. It's not, it needs somebody to give it a prompt. But if you do, but there's going to be people out there prompting it to do stuff like that. And really, it can actually generate guessing passwords. So you can give it somebody's social media and go, well, hang on, here's its, here's their wife or here's their partner, here's their children. And 90% of passwords are
yeah.
already based on this. So yeah, so its password's probably going to narrow it down from the big field of passwords all the way down to a small few, which you could then essentially brute force.
Yeah, so this could be very interesting where like we suddenly live in a world. It depends, you know, on as you said, you know, like if you get all this regulation, there's still like China and Eastern countries like very heavily involved. Like for example, I do install CCTV cameras and I use you know software, but I never want to use AI software because I know where it'll go with surveillance, right? But
Yeah.
they have the technology is insane now. You know, I went I did a presentation like in 2018 on how far AI had gotten into the surveillance industry and how it could be used potentially in the future. And what I
Mm,
found is that, you know, companies like Hikvision, Dawa, you know, the big surveillance
mm.
companies in China, they have already emotional algorithms ready, like they use them in schools to see if you're
I'm
obedient or
working with
not.
a company at the moment that does the exact same thing.
Yeah,
So, um, because I visit a lot of shops and places that have got high value items, they don't. There are the normal panic buttons in places, but people know when you're pressing a panic button. So if something goes badly wrong, they said, don't put your hand under the desk, show your hands where, keep your hands where you speak. You can actually activate an alarm now by just going,
oh
just by
yeah,
pinching your ear. They've
yeah,
actually
yeah.
got a system in place. This system's so good, it can actually, they're working on how wet the floor is at the moment. They want to be able to detect the moisture level on the floor. So if somebody's um, left some water on the floor and it's a slippy surface. But also, if you fall over, it can
Yeah.
pick up that somebody's fall over and then it alerts the control center.
Yeah, and it's also heat maps. Like when you think about the retail
Yeah.
industry, like they're very good at creating heat maps with cameras, right? Like they have cameras everywhere, and then they actually follow and see where people are spending most of the time in the store and so on. And then they could, like the AI is running all that, and so the
Mm.
surveillance industry has really been like heavily into the AI for quite a while. I think it's like five or
Yeah.
6 years they've really been developing it. And but you know what we've seen from China is it's developed with a terrible intent of having a social credit rating. It controls, you know, the masses. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, you could create so much greatness with it. So it's like again, you know, every technology that human seeks to develop, you could use it for always for both good and evil, right? So, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but let's get into like more you know,
It's
safety and security.
who
Sorry.
controls it at the end of the day. And the
Yeah.
governments might have got a considerable amount of power. Businesses also have amount of power, but it's that underlying layer of people that actually control it. And I don't want to say that it's the black market or the darkness. It's just the
I call it
ordinary
the free market. How about that?
free
The free market.
market
Yeah.
has the deciding say
Yep.
because they are more powerful than governments or
Mhm.
businesses combined because they're all they were the governments previously were developed from the free market in a sense because they decided they wanted to have something that would help organize, develop the laws. So we eventually many years ago centralized power
Yeah.
and but ever since then, it's been chipped away at. If you look at the way the power of, like I'm from the UK, where we used to have the feudal system and kings and all, and things like that, and that power has just been eroding and eroding. It's taken a very long time, but it's just eroding away.
Yeah, because
And
I actually I met one of the feudalist overlords. It's he was actually at a conference that I was speaking at, Lord Christopher Monckton of Brenchley, the third Viscount of Brenchley. And so that kind of
wow,
class, and they're very entitled, like his wife was, best friends with Diana and so on. But they're very entitled. It was hilarious. He went to we were at a conference and then he's like, John, they're done something severely wrong here. Like, oh, what's going on? It's like they wrote my name wrong. So he actually went up and he wanted the full title of third Viscount of Brenchley or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's that kind of attitude. But again, like through human history, you had the feudal system, but then within those type of systems, there's like a pendulum, swinging from
yeah,
centralization to decentralization,
yeah,
centralization to decentralization, and it goes through the hundred thousands, probably thousands of years, where we hit that peak of the centralized civilization and government, and then
mm.
we it just collapses because it
It's
becomes
coming to an end.
yeah,
It's
and
definitely
yeah,
coming to an
exactly.
end.
Like,
I mean, there's
but
projects now that I'm looking at on the blockchain, and they're looking to actually replace the voting system with blockchain technology because it doesn't matter who gets elected. I'm trying to be political neutral,
yeah,
but whoever gets elected in either my country or your country or America, then there's going to be contention over it. The last sort of 3 or 4 elections, they've always been saying, "Oh, it was rigged. It was rigged." Well, with blockchain technology, you can pretty much guarantee it's not going to be rigged
yeah,
and
and
that's
if
going to
it's open
be very
source, right? Like if you have a fully open source one that you don't even
mm,
need like a centralized system, like you could easily have a direct democracy like the Swiss does, right? Where everybody votes on
yeah,
everything, and
yeah.
and you could
I
create
mean,
that on the
direct
local level.
democracy
If you
is
if you did want like systems, where people
mm,
voice their opinions and stuff, it's easy to create that with today's technology. You don't need government anymore. Government is obsolete in my view. And
it is obsolete, but the oldest plants are the hardest to kill.
yeah.
That's the thing. The oldest weeds are the hardest to get rid of
Yeah, exactly. It's like a
because their
weed
roots
in
go deep.
humanity's mind is government. I agree.
I know
Yeah.
we could just change the world. Um, I mean, blockchain was the most impressive for a long time until AI. I remember the night my friend came up and said, "Oh, have you heard about like AI?" And I was like, "Oh, not this again." And then he showed me GPT. This was when it was sort of in bits on in bits on the table sort of thing. It was still in prototype mode, but it's GPT's been in development for a long, long time, and it's only till Chat GPT came along did it explode. And I remember seeing this. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any writing problems ever again.
Yeah.
I was using it for all sorts. I was
Yeah.
using it for blog posts. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. But I was using it to write blogs. And I was like, we could integrate this into so many different things.
No, no,
And we've
it's
got so
like
many
I've
ideas.
had ChatGPT write blogs and I tell people it's like, hey, it wrote like a third of my blog here. It
Yeah.
created the content for my blog because it would take me way too long. Like it used to take me like maybe a day or two to, write a proper blog with finding all the data and content. But now it's like this.
It's
Yeah.
just so easy. I don't know how the education system's going to be because can you ever trust anyone with a degree anymore?
No, exactly. And another thing, like this is maybe a dystopian future, like the what if, we're become so dependent on the AI that we're just dumb, like the average American that you go and ask, where's the United States? And they can't even point to the map. Like, are we gonna end up like the movie Idiocracy? Like it's kind of
Yeah.
it's funny how like there's funny, like I don't know if it's funny, but it's a dystopian future that, potentially, can happen over time.
What
And
I think is going to happen is people are going to stop going that way because they're just going to get even more dependent on it. And then AI is going to solve the problems because we're going to type, how do we educate people in a better way? Or how do we explain this to people?
like you definitely don't need a whole bunch of teachers and a government-run Persian system. They will tell us, and they're like, "Oh shit, the whole education system."
90% of I got thrown out of my first, got thrown out of my first school and then, yeah, on my second school, not for misbehavior, it was just, there were like complicated reasons, but they said 90% of my education has been on from the internet
Mhm.
and working out how to solve problems and collaborating. And I'm not talking about just watching videos, but collaborating with people.
Right?
And I really think a lot of my schooling was just a waste
Well, yeah,
because
it's like you never get taught to collaborate. It's the opposite, right? Like you're all by yourself.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's all by itself. Some of the best things I've ever learned and the most useful things I've ever learned have just been through conversations like this.
yeah, yeah. No,
And yeah,
collaboration is key in humanity, and that's why governments doesn't like it because we can collaborate, bounce ideas around. We become
yeah,
so much more empowered, and that's what I also like about these. Like I talk to so many great people all around the world about different topics and things, and without this availability, like now you're sitting, where are you at again? Like ish, like where?
I'm near Chester area
Yeah,
and
and I'm north
near
of
Liverpool.
Winnipeg, Manitoba. We're about probably like how many miles? Like 4 or 5 thousand miles away from each other.
Liverpool.
But here we sit and have a very great intellectual conversation about the future. And this would not be very easy. And first of all, like how would I even find you without any of the social networks that was created? Like love or hate
Yeah,
them, but like how would we ever had found this connection? I would have to travel basically to where you live and then walk around to rest like whatever I was in the city. I
mm,
tried to find interesting
mm,
people, but now you just find them everywhere. Like that's what, I'm part of something called file.co, which is a network of like-minded individuals all around the world. And those would not have been possible if it wasn't for technology. So we
yeah,
gotta put huge praise to technology as well as, there's a lot of good things in technology that, a lot of people tend to forget because they see technology today as Facebook and Google, the evil corporations. They don't
yeah.
they don't understand that it could be used for so much good in society as well.
Oh, absolutely. But I was just thinking about a phrase by Milton Friedman that people should be just allowed to pursue their own interests, right? And that's one of the things. So AI will facilitate, not only facilitate that, but enable it as well. So people are never going to not have interests. So they'll probably be using AI to just be, become more of an expert at their own personal interests. So I don't think we've got a problem to worry that people are going to get stupider.
No,
It's
it's
just as
it's
long as their
just
interests
like
are.
yeah, I think if it's like if we let the current system, fall apart
Mm,
of education, and then if you have the AI instead and all that, like you don't need any teachers, and that would then prompt, the self-interest and I think a great
mm,
revolution, maybe a renaissance even in humanity, where we
yeah.
could change things for so much greater things and learn
Mhm.
so much amazing things in this world. Like think about when there's a lot of people knowing a lot more about things, like,
Mhm.
and then they just push it further and further and further. But there's so many more people now doing that, with the
Mm.
possibility of what AI could give them as input. So yeah,
Mm.
the
One of the
this
things I think that's going to happen, and it might be a crazy conspiracy, but you've got it on record. It might happen in the next 5 years. So if it does, please refer back to this. But most people say, okay, well, GPT has its own access to a very limited amount of
yeah.
information. And they're talking about giving it access to, say, Google. That's another thing. But from my perspective, there's a bigger underbelly of the internet, and that's all the databases, and that's all the data. Like Facebook has its own database, LinkedIn has its own database. Every website has all these databases, and that's all the customer information and things like that. What happens when AI gets access to all of that kind of information?
Yeah, what happens when they get smart enough to find that information?
Well,
Like
yeah, they're going to be. They probably already are, but see, it's only protected by 256-bit encryption. So
yeah,
as long as you can get through that, you pretty much got access to every database on Earth. And but when it gets access to every bit of employee information, then the world's going to be a very, very surreal.
Yeah, it's
No,
like like everything is suddenly everything could become open and available for everyone that has been public information, right? Like imagine that. Like that'd be pretty insane. Like I luckily, like everybody likes to say this, but I got nothing to hide, so I'm not afraid that anybody would blackmail me. But think about it though.
no.
Like think about the amount of things that you do as a human being that might be a little naughty or whatever crazy things goes on in that could suddenly, pop out there and be like, oh,
It's
and
not going to be a positive or a negative. It's going to be
no,
a bit of both.
yeah, yeah, it's very interesting how that could take us in any direction. Now, let's go back to because we were talking about sentiment engines, and I would be very,
Yes.
I think this is the time to like give
It's
people a little
scarily
bit of
simple as
a,
well.
yeah, let's give people. So, do you have it on a video that I could
I
just,
don't have it on me at the moment. I'm going to make it just after this, right? And after
yeah,
this recording.
okay, so,
And yeah, but it's scary. All you do is enter a like a Twitter post,
mhm.
and it gives you a score of either between 1 and -1. So anything below 0 is negative, and anything above 0 is positive. So anything between 1 and 0 is positive. And I think people will be able to see this is how they've been doing all these tricks. So anyone who out there who feels like they've been shadow banned,
Which I
or
have. I was like, I remember
yes,
talking about that in 2016 when it really like felt like it started to happen. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and one thing listeners might not be aware of is that they can tell how fast you're typing. So it's not just you type a message and then press send. They can actually tell how fast you're typing the keys. And if you're typing a bit too fast, that's somebody who's not in a positive state of mind. So they can
Very
tell
interesting.
when you've put, I am not kidding, there isn't a, they can tell when you've put your finger on the key and pressed it down. The time it's taken for you to put your finger on the key and press it down and release it.
Wow.
I might be able, I'll show that as well if you're interested in that.
Oh,
That's an
yeah,
thing
please.
I'm
And what
talking.
we'll do is we'll share all this video or information, whatever you create, James. We can share it on my Telegram and make it available for people because this is we kind of aware of it to a certain
It's
extent,
basic
that's
JavaScript.
going on, but this is like it's very basic what they're doing, these algorithms that they
Mm,
so-called like to call them and what they're doing. But it's like
mm.
nobody has really like seen exactly how they work. Like this is just a very basic sentiment engine that basically everybody uses, right? Like am I correct? Like it's I think like
Yeah,
any
yeah, it's
social media
easily
platform.
downloadable. It's downloadable in seconds and open to everybody to see.
Yeah.
And I've also kept a copy of it. I'll actually send you a copy of all the software
Please.
as well.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure put it onto USB because
Sorry.
you know what it's like when if somebody's like, I don't like this guy sharing this information, and
Yeah.
it's not confidential, top secret, or anything like that. It's really easy to come across.
It's open
But
source, most of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all open source. It's
Yeah,
just people have never taken the interest.
yeah, that's really amazing. There's a lot of things, people have been talking about the censorship stuff that's going on. Like now I use, for example, this video will be posted to one platform that runs on a blockchain. It's called Odyssey. I don't know, you might, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
Not really like
It's just a free market alternative to YouTube with basically zero censorship. The only things that they come after is, of course, I think child porn or pornography, like they don't want that on
good on
there. And that makes sense because it's pure evil, especially the child porn. So, but they're
them.
like completely free open market platform, and I think that might be the future actually. Like and then on top of the AI and everything, really enhance humanity. I think these platforms that have got, they really have gained like semi, what do you call it? Semi monopolies, right? And
Yeah.
monopolies are toxic for any society. It just corrupts everything, and everything within it is corrupt because it has a monopoly.
That
Like
will
you
be
see
coming
that,
to an end very soon.
yeah, and you see that like it's funny how that works because like you see them everywhere, like these monopolies, and they're terrible. Like we see them here in Manitoba, just an example. You see in the way people build roads here, they're just terrible. You just go down south of the border. to North Dakota, the U.S. neighboring state, and
Mm.
then suddenly the roads are completely fine with the same climate. So,
I mean, a
uh,
friend of mine got threatened by the local authority because he recorded a phone call from he was speaking to somebody at the local authority, and they were being abusive and threatening down the phone. And he recorded it and said, "I'm going to put it on." And they're not worried anymore because they know. So I said, "Why don't we turn this into an NFT?" And then when he mentioned that we could turn this into, when I mentioned it to him, we could turn it into an NFT, he mentioned it back to the local authority, and the issue got resolved really quickly. And they actually said, "No, please, please don't do that. Please don't." I was like,
you
oh,
can blackmail government.
why not?
I love it. I love the idea. It's pretty funny because I'm a guy that wants no government, but no, like I still want rules in society, but I just don't think we need the government at all. And I think like with AI and with a lot of technologies that have come out the last like decades now, I think people
Mm,
like are becoming more and more aware. I think like especially during COVID and the crazy lockdowns that was going on,
yeah.
I think we've started to like kind of wake up a little bit because some people just went all the way to the other side, right? And they're all, they've been watching their television for too long. Like the thing with you, especially like IT developers, don't really have
Mm.
TVs, I would assume. Like they get all their information from the internet mostly. So
Oh,
like,
I could tell you some things about TVs that any IT developer all of a sudden starts turning into a conspiracy theorist, right?
yeah,
We were
yeah, yeah.
talking about Operation Prism before Operation Prism was publicized, before Edward Snowden started
Mhm.
publishing it. We could see, hang on, if somebody can do something, they will. So we can see, like in the code, we understand what's going on,
Right.
and it wouldn't take much for somebody to do something bad with it, and more than likely the government will. But one of the things I really don't like, this is completely off script because I didn't bring this up before,
Oh yeah,
but a lot
please.
of people have got smart TVs now, and
Yep.
you know what I'm gonna, you think you know what I'm gonna say,
Uh,
don't you?
Maybe.
Well, we actually took apart a smart TV, a very good one, downloaded and got all the software out of it, and looked into what signals it was sending out. Oh my god, I take the power cord out of mine every night now because there's as particular. I'm not going to name which app it was, but everyone in the UK has it because it's a very popular one. And this was
Okay.
listening into your router. This was trying to find all the information about. It was actually downloading videos. It was actually putting in adverts, customized adverts into your TV.
Wow. So well, it's listening to you, right? Like it's
It was
basically that.
It's not only it was listening to you, but it was listening to your internet traffic.
Yeah. And that is something I
When
was not
it
aware of
did,
actually. Like the
right.
internet traffic.
Yeah, it was listening into your internet traffic. Oh God, I'm going to get arrested for this. But what it was also, as Google's listening into stuff you're saying, it's listening into Google traffic as well. So
Mhm.
all of a sudden, you're getting your own customized adverts on the TV.
Yes, I have friends, that talks about this with their iPhones, where
Mm,
they just like that. And it was Google usually that pulled this off because they didn't know that they had to turn off everything in their
mm,
Google apps, right? So like it's like, oh, we talked about this, and now I suddenly get advertisements, or like especially when you're online, like you just search on
mm,
anything. Right, like I don't use Google very much at all anymore. I usually use a Brave browser. That's what I use to find information.
yeah,
It's not the most fantastic like browser as like Google is actually pretty good at finding things,
mm,
but it also hides a lot of things, right? But what I found is that like when I started using stuff like that, I don't get any advertisements, and like it's disappeared a lot of it. Like Brave browser itself actually has advertisements that you could put on to get some. You could actually get some tokens
yeah.
by doing that and by searching around and doing different
The
things.
basic
So
attention tokens.
yeah, so like, but you actually get paid for using the internet, and to the advantage of them as a company, they could put up the advertisements. That's how they make their revenue, right? But
Mm,
again, it's when it comes to privacy, and this is interesting because there's a lot of people that are very interested in privacy. Now,
mm,
I'm a person that, kind of just say like screw privacy. Everybody knows who I am on the internet now. So
yeah.
I kind of like just be like whatever, like I don't even care what I say anymore. But a lot of people want, to have that privacy in their own lives. And
Mm,
and not become like semi public figures that are out there talking about everything in their lives and so on. So what are the best ways for people currently, because there's a lot of like we get this thrown in our face all the time. Oh, VPNs are the way to go and all this stuff, like, oh, you get
Oh,
full privacy.
I don't
So
like VPN.
yeah, please explain a little bit like what you felt as a program, because you know all this stuff. Like, what is your best forms of privacy right now? What is the best ways of a person to gain, like, I don't know if it could be full, but like a lot of privacy on what they do online, because people still like to be connected and do things online.
Okay, let me just say why VPNs aren't all that wonderful. Um, First of all, if you're trying to hide from government, then first of all, they're going to it won't allow anything like that. It wouldn't be legal if and it wouldn't be in the government's interest, so they'd shut it down pretty quick. The way they get around this, you'll hear a lot in the adverts saying, "Oh, we don't record any information; it goes through memory," which it might be true. I can't say. I've never seen them, but that is technically possible that they could be using memory. So it doesn't actually get recorded, and therefore, if it's recorded, it can still be recovered after it's been deleted. So these guys say, well, we're using memory, which means it never actually records anything. But they will still keep a record of who you are, and they will still keep a
Yeah,
record, and there will still be a record. They might not be keeping it, but there will still be a record of where you connect to their VPN and where that VPN has then gone on to connect to. Their
right.
ISPs are probably keeping that, but there will be records of where things are kept. So they might allocate you an IP address, and during that time, you're the only person using that IP address. So thereby they can tell where you're going on the internet. That's great if you want to hide it from your boss or family or some of that nature. So yeah, on that basis, it works very well. But the government can, or any law enforcement can come along, issue a warrant, and then say, okay, and they can get where you're going. So if you're a political activist,
Yeah,
then a VPN is not going to do anything to help you.
right. Yeah,
Any of the
nothing to hide
intelligence
from authorities anyways. Yeah.
yeah, nothing. Um, but the intelligence services have been known to target political activists in the past.
Yeah, oh yeah, we've
So
seen many. Look where what's his name now? We all know who he is. Oh my goodness, how can I forget his name? WikiLeaks. Assange, yeah. Look at, he's
yeah,
rotting in prison because he exposed and he used technologies like that, right? They just despise that human being. Remember, like how Clinton was saying that, oh, we should bomb him. Like like total psychopaths in government that wants, all this control over peasants, and they really hate when they get exposed for, the insane war crimes that the United States committed. Now everybody's talking about Russia. Russia is
I
not
got
good at
talk
all.
about in the UK. Some of the things we've done over
Oh,
the years.
yeah, Tony Blair, like the bloodhound Tony Blair is and all. Yeah, no, it's such a it's such a terrible
We
spot
just
that
forget that they're not there for us. They're just weapons salesmen.
yeah,
That's really it.
that's exactly they're just like what government has become is just a revolving door for every big corporate sector, like the pharma industry, the military industrial complex, as you just mentioned, the
Hmm.
banking industry. Like, they're just there as a gatekeeper basically to inhibit anybody to
But
compete.
yeah, the funny thing's going to come out when the central bank digital currencies come out and the banks realize that they ain't got anything to sell anymore. I actually genuinely think banks are just going to be a relic
I
because
know
you
that they
won't
tried
need.
to lobby, though. There's something called the Digital Dollar Project in the United
Yeah,
States, and
Bedcoin.
and they've been trying, because that's the banks trying to. But again, the banks in the United States, a lot of them, the primary dealers, own the Federal Reserve. So who cares? Like, it doesn't matter to Jamie Dimon. Like, he still gets it. He might just sit there and like, oh, let's just give me those shares. I'll be fine. Give me 7%. It says in the Federal Reserve Act, of the revenues of any monetary activity. So yeah, the backers will be fine no matter what. Like, they know their schemes. They've been around, for
Yeah,
decades, for centuries now,
yeah.
having their Ponzi schemes running rampant through history of humanity. So they don't care at all. Like
Yeah,
they're
you've got to remember that most people see a bank as a place where you put money, but no, it's not. It's just a sales outlet for
you lend
financial
it. You
products.
lend it to the bank. Like when you
Yeah,
deposit money into a bank account, you actually lend it to the bank to do whatever they want. Like might go and gamble in derivatives markets for all we know, right? Like they don't care. And it's the same thing with crypto exchanges. You know, like people
yeah,
like to talk about how great Coinbase or Binance is. No, it's the same damn thing. You know, if you want to own something, you got to have physical things like this. And
yeah,
let's get into that because I know that's one of your businesses, by the way.
yeah.
Like you need assets in a physical way in this world,
Yes, yeah.
because a lot of people
I'm one of these
forget that. And let's talk a little bit about, what you do with like what you developed as a service to people around the world and what kind of interesting
I've got
information.
a free service that is expanding globally. That it's just simply a list of um, safety deposit box centers and private vaults. And the vaults range in size from letterbox size vaults to rooms, massive rooms that you could fit several cars in that are as strong as, if not stronger than a safety deposit box. The so my motivation for behind it because it was so difficult to find in the UK particularly. You know, America's a bit of a different kettle of fish, but in the UK it was very difficult to find a safety deposit box centre because I generally don't trust ones that are provided by banks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, just look to Greece, like what happened in Greece when they raided the self
yeah,
deposit box there. Yeah, so I agree too.
now the bank might be good to keep it safe, but I prefer private
Yeah.
services and private companies that do this because with a bank, it's an offshoot product. You know, it's just something we might offer. We offer other things as well, but with private companies, that's all they think about all day, every day. Is the place safe? Is there enough staff? Is this doing? Is that working? And the diligence taken by private companies to keep their facilities secure is just it's not even comparable to a bank. So I prefer a private facility, and a lot of them are even cheaper than the banks.
Yeah, which
So
is really good. So, basically, like I talk to a lot of people that are looking for, safe ways. Like I, of course, have a lot of stuff that I save at certain places. I won't tell anyone,
yeah,
but then there's when you have a lot of it, that's the key here.
mm,
When you have a lot of it, like
yeah,
where are you going to store it? And I do know people that have decent amount of money around the world. Like they're always looking for these options. Like everybody's
yeah.
talking about Singapore or whatever and they just use like a massive, like what are what is the big one?
SFLV or
Bricks.
GL.
Yeah, bricks
Yeah,
or yeah, something like that, right? But they're not
mm,
aware that there's a lot of other in a free market that are trying to compete to provide
yeah,
maybe a lot even better services. Because who knows, maybe Brinks at one time will suddenly be like, oh, hey, government is so authoritarian, and we're going to start collaborating with them because they're so big. They have a
mm.
lot of the gold and silver. They'd be like, you
But
know what? Here's a goal. I know that a lot of people think that that would never happen, but maybe
they
it
might
could.
be
But yeah,
secure in terms of keeping your gold and silver safe. What about your data though?
yeah,
I mean, they might be good on that as well. But what about if we do succumb to some kind of um, authoritarian politics, and then all of a sudden, all these big companies that they're just going to say, right, we want all your data, we want all your
yeah,
data, because that's going to be a war. It's going to be like a quiet data war at some point because somebody is going to want it all.
yeah,
And remember, one of the Pentagon's problems they had was they integrated this new IT system when they got really big into IT, and they realized they hadn't changed their BIOS passwords. So all of their new computers that they bought had come from China. China realized where they were going
yeah.
and were able to have access to all the Pentagon's information. And there was a lad in this country who worked out the same trick and actually broke
Right.
into the Pentagon.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I can't remember his name. Gary Kinnock, I think it was.
yeah. So what you
Um,
do there with your website is you basically
but my
show
website,
people. Yeah,
my,
keep going.
my website basically is just a list of all the different companies in the UK and banks that offer safe deposit box facilities. They've got the ability to place reviews on them, because they all offer very, very different things. So one vault might not be suitable for one person, but it might be suitable for another. It's also to do with location as well, because it's very inadvisable. If there's a vault at the end of your street, that's not the one you want to be using. You don't want to be close to your stuff,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of variety of security situations when you're handling concentrated money, whether it's gold or silver. If people find out, then if somebody blabs or says something, and then all of a sudden you're targeted,
Mm-hmm.
then simply there could be a situation where you want some distance between you and the vault.
No,
And
it makes total sense. Like not like it could be just within your country, but it could also be international, right? Because what
international,
if
yeah,
like UK or what if Canada, like look at UK and Canada right now. What if our government went crazy, which is like a borderlining doing right now? Like, wouldn't
yeah.
it be good for you
That's
to
for any
have?
customers
Yeah,
abroad as well. If you
yeah,
want to look at the UK as one of the safest countries, I mean, you've got to remember that we are completely surrounded by water, which gives us a strategic advantage.
yeah,
And a lot of people do come in from abroad looking to keep their valuable items in a UK security box. And several of these, there's nobody getting into these. There was an incident many years ago where one of the vaults, which this vault that got broken into, nobody would insure it. It was very unusual case because they decided not to use CCTV. So any vaults that are on, this is why due diligence is so
yeah,
important. That all the vaults are on our list all have CCTV. Some of
yeah.
them have been allowed. I actually asked several of them, could I mention this? But they have seismic sensors on, so
Yeah,
they
which
can
is
pick
very
up the
important. You know what?
vibration.
This comes into me. I'm in the
That's just
security
one of the
industry.
measures.
Yeah,
Mm,
I've been to the vaults. Like I actually, this is an interesting story. Let me, and then we'll get back to you right away. But one of the customers that I work for is the Royal Canadian Mint. You know that ships, they make
mm,
all the coinage for almost everybody in the world except for the UK, I think makes their own.
mm,
They mint, you guys mint your own, and then the United States, but most other places in the world actually gets minted here. The coinage gets minted here in Manitoba, Canada, like where I live. And
mm.
but at the same location, they have two vaults there like very
Yeah,
high, like try to get into those. There's armed guards with machine guns inside
yeah,
of the facility. But again, you know, like I've installed everything from seismic to like it's up the yin yang of sensors, every like
mm,
surveillance sensors that I put in,
mm,
including biometrics to get in. You got and it's a biometric system that is not connected to the internet. That's very key. You know, like you
yes,
can't have systems because as soon as you set it up to any internet, like as soon as you
mm,
plug it into the Ethernet that is connected to any internet anywhere, you know, like you're at risk of getting
mm,
hacked and then stolen that
yeah,
information. But you need these systems to be completely standalone, separate, right? So
yeah,
it's just impressive to watch, like the security that you can implement at these places because yeah, I've been
mm,
in the security industry, look on the monitoring side, right? You really see like
mm,
the craziness. We had, I remember in Norway, there was somebody at a goldsmith jewelry place. They had hired, they had the, oh, sorry, hired. They'd rented the apartment above, and actually they knew that that the jeweler had taken a vacation. So what they did, they
mm.
actually core drilled through the concrete into his place, and they didn't have a security system. So, but anyway, it's a sorry for like going a little sidetrack there, but it's
Yeah,
just like it's so
you wouldn't be able to write some of the things people think they can get away with, and the procedures and things you have to implement in order to mitigate against things like that. But a lot of the vaults, there's one not a few cities away from me called St. James. That's one of the oldest vaults. There's Chancery Lane and St. James has been around since the 1920s. It's just over 100 years old and has never had an incident.
yeah, which is
So that,
that's you're looking for track record too, right? Which is very
yeah,
important.
yeah. And one of the interesting things I've seen through private vault sites is in the last 5 or 6 years is the demand for private for safety deposit box facilities. It went up from about 40 to nearly 70 in the last 2 years.
Wow, that's almost a 50%. That's a what
It's almost
40% increase.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's about a
Oh no, sorry.
75%.
Yeah. I'm far off there.
So yeah,
Yeah.
75%
Yeah.
increase and
Yeah.
that's just responding to demand for um, safety deposit boxes, and that's only private companies. That's not talking about banks or that are now offering them. And some of the banks decided to close down in the beginning of the millennium or before 2010, and then all of a sudden they've decided, no, we really do need to offer this now because there's so much demand for it.
Yeah, because their customers are asking about it too, I'm pretty sure. And you see that firsthand, having your website, you see the traffic, right? That is
Yeah,
going on.
and there's one company called the Vaults Group who have gone from nowhere, from nothing, had no vaults less than 10 years ago, and they've now opened 10 vaults in the
Wow.
last 10 years.
And thinking about that too, just building a building of that scope and size, it's not just like you're not just creating a building, like a house or a regular
Yeah.
commercial building. Like you need to reinforce everywhere. You need to do a lot of things to make sure that it's
Well,
secure
there's
for
a
all.
minimum of a meter thickness of
Yeah,
wall you have
yeah,
to drill through. If somebody was going to try and all around it, there is about a meter thickness of walls.
yeah, yeah. That's
And
you don't
then
find that much in regular commercial buildings. Let's just yeah.
they even go so far as to use different cement providers because they realize if they're buying that much cement for one building, that all of a sudden somebody might ask a question.
I'll catch on to
So,
it. Yeah, no, exactly. It's like almost like data centers. I worked at building a data center, and if you drove around, you'd be like, "What is this weird building?" Like you wouldn't. But if you have a trained eye, you'll follow oh, that's a data center. But they were building a data center for all the financial transactions for the biggest mutual fund company in Canada here in Manitoba. And so I worked at that place, and it's pretty insane, like how low key it is. Like it's just in the middle of a business park, and just have like
yeah,
a couple of like cooler tower outside. But if you know what you're looking for, you know exactly what it is. But again, it's like the way of like almost hiding yourself as a regular building, but it's like
yeah.
there's yeah.
Some of them I've gone past and they just look like a little, very small doorway. Looks like a fire exit. And there's a sign on the door saying, this is the vaults. And you'd think it's just a like a cellar hatch or something like that. It's so small. And that's how discreet some of these places are. But even the doorways themselves are actually set up so to be secure.
Yeah.
So you'll find you walk in towards the doorway, but there's quite a big thickness of wall, so you can't, so nobody can carry any big tooling towards the door.
Yeah.
But you have to play the balancing act of discretion and security. But they managed to do it most of the time, and several of these places you wouldn't even know existed. I've gone past, like let's just say the one in Liverpool because it is quite public. But there's one in the Liver building, massive iconic building, and I didn't even realize there was actually a safety deposit box centre underneath the Liver building. And nobody's getting into this place. They're just not going to get into it.
Yeah.
Um, you go in, you have to be let in by the security guard. You then have to walk down at least five, six sets of steps, and that's before you're even at the entrance to it. And if it's open, then you've got to go through at least two security doors to get to the reception. Then you've got to go through several other doors. I'm not going to say how many,
Yeah.
but you have to get through quite a few extremely strong doors before you're actually in the room. And then you've got there's three sets of keys to open each box. Not just three spare sets. There's got to be two people unlock
Oh yeah.
unlock the cabinet, unlock the
Yeah.
mini cabinet, and then you've got to unlock your own box. So nobody's getting in. And the
Yeah.
price of some of these places as well is really unbelievable. You can pick up a safety deposit box now for about £100 a year,
Oh
maybe
wow.
120 a year.
Yeah,
So,
that is pretty impressive.
and yeah, and I'll give you an example of the size. For about that much space, imagine how much gold you could fit in one of these.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
But not satisfied with that, I also have it insured as well. There's a specialist company in the UK and in every country that will insure safety deposit boxes. And
Oh
they
yeah, there.
insure things
Yeah.
not much. You know, it's about 16, say £20 per 10,000.
Right.
So £20 a year per 10,000.
So you got insurance on your wealth insurance.
Yeah, and there's insurance on the vault insurance. There are a couple of companies that offer it, but you do get a big difference. So I advertise all the different insurers on there. So always shop around for a price.
Yeah. And you're looking at like pushing this website to several other places, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
too,
I
right?
mean we're in the UK and USA at the moment. So I want to do Canada, Australia. We're working on Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore,
Yeah.
and the whole of the European continent by the end of the year.
Yeah, which
And it's a free service where you can go on and find just a box that fits your needs.
yeah, so this is pretty amazing, like having that availability because it's like a lot of times people just go to a big one because that's all they know.
Yeah,
And most of the like even the gold places, when you look at what they offer for vaulting service, usually it's at a big. Some of them actually have their own private vaults, like when you look at them, but most of them just like defer you to a big vaulting company, right? When you do buy gold from or silver from them, just ship it directly to
yeah,
a big. So yeah,
and it doesn't make sense. I mean, if people out there want to buy a £50,000 1 kilogram gold bar, you don't want that anywhere near your house.
no,
And
definitely not. Yeah.
no, I mean, a very sad story. A friend of mine, he had a coin collection that was worth around £30,000, and four guys broke in one night and used a metal detector that was set to pick up only gold.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, exactly.
they assaulted him, tied him up, and they found that he'd actually hidden it under the floor under his bed. So they found that within 5 minutes. I mean, just don't take the risk as well. And there's no way his insurance, home insurance, would pay out on something like that.
No, yeah, it's like you
And I think
actually.
they even validated his home insurance policy because he was keeping items on it like that. There's something called underinsurance where if your items are worth more than you've insured them for, they won't pay out on any of it.
Yeah, which is yeah.
I didn't know this about this until a few years ago, and I wasn't sure how many other people are aware. But underinsurance is one of the ways insurance companies save money
Yeah.
because I think it's about 1 in 6 policies are underinsured, so they know they can all these policies that they're taking in, they can still get paid, but they're not going to have to pay out on them.
Yeah, so it's very interesting like how that works and I think it's needed like it's a huge service that is needed because a lot of people and you've done like the thing is you do the due diligence on these vaulting services, right? So you have the
Yeah,
information about them
most
available
of
to
them. I don't
people.
actually. I'm going to be doing something soon because there's several vaults out there that we've looked at, and there's a website for them saying that we now take precious items, but we now have safety deposit boxes. But the building doesn't exist, and I'm looking at this, so I start doing the process of finding out more about them,
Yeah.
and they don't exist. There's several places advertising vaults and safety deposit boxes that don't exist, and they're just there as phishing scams.
Oh yeah, yeah, you just ship it
So
to them and then
any on my site, I've been checked, and somebody has visited them.
yeah,
At the moment, so I've spoken to the insurers, and they say, yeah, we've visited them because the insurers will have to visit it before they
right.
insure it. So I know, and yes, so that's how we check the. But we're going to be implementing much more stringent due diligence as well, so we can maybe give them a rating. I don't know,
Yeah.
but yeah, so you can't trust anything on the private vault site that you do know it exists.
Yeah,
But be
no,
careful that if you do look through Google, that you could be looking at something that looks very, very nice but isn't there.
right. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like you physically have to go there and actually talk to the people and
Yeah,
figure that out. And you do that like you're doing that due diligence instead of like people having to do it for themselves. It takes a lot of time,
yeah,
trying to do all that. And
and
especially
that's
if
why
you're
I
not a
made it.
yeah, and
Yeah,
especially when you're not aware of the industry itself and how it works or like different types of securities, like it's paramount that you actually like have somebody that an expert actually finding that out for you and having that right for you instead of you having to spend a lot of your time trying to figure this out.
absolutely. And I had a house fire as well many years ago. We lost quite a few items. mainly due to smoke damage, but it could have been so much worse. And after the fire, I lost my father and then my grandmother. And trying to find their important documents as well was just unbelievably difficult.
Yeah.
And if they'd had something, if they'd had a place where they just kept them um, for £100 a year, it's not really going to break the bank, and it just makes everything so much easier for other people as well. So, like house deeds and copies of policies and things like that. It doesn't
Yeah, or your
necessarily have to be
will,
monetary.
like even your will, like if you
It
had
will
it.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I started investigating the like safety deposit box market, I thought this just sounds so simple. It's just going to be like a nice little couple of pages, blah blah blah. I opened up an absolute can of worms and an opportunity as well, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't realize the kind of money people put into things like baseball cards.
Oh
You'd
yeah.
think, okay,
Yeah.
how expensive can a baseball card be? I'll tell you, $12 million, the most expensive one sold.
And what you got to remember is like rich people, they look at like these things as basically storing their value as well, right? Like it's
Exactly.
yeah, because
Yeah, if you
they
look at
are
the
very
market,
aware of what's going on, the inflation
yes,
tax and so on. So they're they try to find different assets that can protect and save their value. Like you look at
yeah,
the this is just peasants, but in Turkey right now they're buying used cars as a protect just as protection, against
yeah,
the insane government policies that have destroyed the value of the lira, for example. So yeah,
mhm,
there's a lot of people understand, like they save their whole lives. This is I heard
yeah,
so many sad stories around the world. They save their whole lives in all these different currencies, and then they withdraw it, and then suddenly they found out that it's like, oh, inflation has destroyed half of my value, or suddenly the government just decides to be like, oh, we're just going to devalue our currency overnight, and suddenly you got, instead of the 100% of your like purchasing power, you're now at 25% of what you had in purchasing power.
yeah.
So it's so important that
Well,
people
same with COVID.
understand.
COVID's the excuse for everything.
Yeah,
COVID's the excuse for everything, because the governments are in so much debt. I mean, I think they're nearly up to like the amount of debt that can be paid back in one lifetime in the UK.
yeah,
What was it? I think the US is now up to 33 trillion, 35. What's the
yeah. It's at
latest one?
32 trillion, right? Like they're just about to
32
pass it
trillion.
in a few weeks or so. Like they'll pass 32 trillion, and like they have such an atrocious amount of debt. It's never going to get paid back. It's going to have to either, like, these are the events, like governments want default. Everybody says, oh, the government will default. Everybody's like, oh, the United States is going to default on their debt because they don't raise their debt ceiling. No, the only way a government actually defaults on its debt, it's two ways. It's either
Mm.
it devalues its currency overnight, or it
Yeah.
goes into hyperinflation, which is
Mm.
basically they take like, that's why I have a lot of these little current fancy flashy looking currencies back here, is because they try to destroy the value of the currency. But then again, the savers, people that save their lifetime, I heard so
Mm.
many terrible stories for, like, there was a guy from Argentina that saved all of his money, all of his life. It was his pension. He was about to
Mm.
retire, and then in 1980s, they just basically overnight, had a bank holiday. We heard all about those. We had a
Mm.
few actually just recently in the United States. And overnight suddenly is like the government just be like, oh yeah, yeah, now your currency is worth X amount, and you just basically lost all your life savings,
Yeah.
overnight. And it's very like, this is, especially now that we're entering the last cycles. We're so indebted, it's not sustainable whatsoever. So they have
Yeah.
to do something. And that's why you hear all the elites, like, oh, we want the global reset, like Klaus Schwab, or you have the head of the IMF, and everybody's talking about a reset. They
The
want to
UK
reset.
produced four of them.
Yeah, yeah. And
We
you
used
got
to
to,
have guineas and gold guineas, and I can't remember what else went with it. Then we went to pounds, shillings, and pence,
yeah,
and then it's interesting, right? Because I have some coins I have some coins in one of my vaults actually, and before 1920, our currency was based on sterling silver, which is about 90% silver.
yeah,
It's 92.5, but let's say 90%. Then that's before 1920. 2 years after the Great War, the World War One
Yep.
finishes in the 1918. They then debased the currency down to 50% silver, and and so it was 50% silver until 1947. So if you go into a jeweler's or a coin dealer's and ask for pre-47 UK currency, they know you want 50% silver.
Yep.
And then in 1947, they just said, take all the silver out of it and we'll use copper.
Mm-hmm.
That 1947 was 2 years after World War One, to World
Yeah.
War Two.
Yeah, and I don't know where it currently is, but in Canada, for example, like they used to have it here. It's the same. If you go to every day, I studied so many different nations. Every nation had gold and silver coinage, and then they
Yes.
debased it into other like lower and where it's at. Like actually, this is interesting. This is from Norway and Canada, and of course, they both used the Royal Canadian Mint to mint their currency at the same time. This is the same date.
Yeah.
Norway and Canada removed their pence, no, their penny, sorry, penny here in Canada,
Mm.
and the euro, which is the pence, like in the UK, right? Like the lowest
Yeah.
denominated currency, because it had too much copper in it. It was worth 4 cents, not 1 cent in real
Yeah.
terms. So it's that's what needs to happen. It's because and also they devalue the currency then, and then the government could spend some more money and go into some more debt because they diminish it. But now it's just steel knockouts. Like that's all that it is. Just
Yeah.
tiny little plating on it, through
And now they're trying
electrolysis.
to get rid of it. They can't even, it doesn't matter how cheap the material is, they're printing it so fast that actually the material will be worth more than the value of it.
Well, also this is the I think I haven't seen any other ones, but this is like talking about that. By the way, the Reichsmark had that
Yeah.
problem, and they actually just at the end when they had the $5 and $10 billion marks, they actually didn't print the backside of it because it cost much. The only so again, like we're reaching that point, and that's why we have all the talk about CBDCs and so on. Because then you could just like you could basically create unlimited amounts of zeros on a computer, so nobody cares, right? And but that's where we're gone to, and they're just looking at that as a stupid solution to their problem. But it's not gonna help. Like look at Ecuador. This is interesting. In Ecuador, they tried to have a CBDC very early. It was 2014, but then by 2018 there was no adoption. Nobody used it, which is good. I'm very happy about that. And look at Nigeria right now. Like they're kind of like in the like it's seeming to the CBDC. They actually fired their central bank chief because their CBDC seems to be collapsing and like nobody really wants to use it. And let's hope that we get to that. But I'm worried about our Western nations. Like we're so
Yeah.
polite and nice and so brainwashed, a lot of us, that we would just go
Yeah.
straight along with it.
That's the thing, because I think it's a very, governments are just narcissistic. And I know narcissism is sort of not a buzzword, but it's a
Yeah.
thing these days. And
Oh yeah.
people just don't want to think of anything else. They're like, oh, I want my job. I just want everything to tick over nicely. Well, be an anarcho-capitalist then, because
Yeah.
because it's not drama free, but it's a lot less drama.
Yeah.
Like you'd think I'm a genius by betting on the fact that governments are going to print money. Like one of the questions when I can't say the investing, but one of the things you've got to ask yourself is if you had a money printer in your house, how long would it be before you press the button for it to churn out money?
I like that. That's a very good mental experiment, isn't it? Where you
Yeah,
see that, like how long would it take you? You have the possibility, like it's
yeah,
right there, right in front of you. Like how long would it
yeah.
take for you? At what point will you go to that extent that you would, it ties you enough that you'd be like, oh, yeah,
Hmm.
that's, I could print money out of thin air here. I can
Well,
have
would
a
you just
million.
sit there and go, no, I'm going to be somebody of principle and I'm going to pay for my car repairs out of my wages. No, no, no. Or I'll take a loan out and then pay off the loan.
That's why
Why not just,
every time throughout history, it never works like when you
and
have
it
the access to
never
that printer.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah, because nobody can resist the temptation. And I'm sorry, but whatever country you're from, your government cannot resist the temptation to
Mm-mm.
press the button and print more money.
Human nature. It's very,
Yeah,
it's written against us.
yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
But
so
if you
yeah, go ahead.
integrate blockchain into that, and imagine for a second that everybody in the world would know if you generated more money. then all of a sudden you've got a bit more of a leeway. Then you've got to be more accountable.
Yeah.
At the moment, what is it? Because of COVID, that they had to print off 50% more currency. The
Yeah,
entire currency supply
it's just
being rolled up.
ridiculous. You're starting to see that hockey stick moment. You know, I think the Canadians invented the hockey stick chart. Maybe I don't think it was, but anyways, it's the
Mm,
stick chart that you're starting to see. Because like what you see a lot of times is you see like the last maybe year or two. So like when you go and look at charts, it's like, oh, okay, that doesn't look so bad. But what you need the context of history, right? And so
mm,
like when you go and suddenly pull charts out to 50 years or 100 years, if
mm.
possible, even 200 years, you just see like, and that's the
Yeah,
warning sign, right? That
it's the
you're
law of
starting to,
exponential. Ninety
yeah,
percent of the rise happens in the last 10% of the time.
yeah, 100% every time. Like,
Yeah,
and the thing is, when that happened, there's a trigger to that happening, and it's the
mm,
distrust that our currency has value to purchase us
mm,
something in a day or month or week from now, that it will hold its
yeah,
value. When that chain broke, that's how they survive. It's all about trust. When that trust
mm,
breaks, it's game over. Like every
mm.
currency that I studied, and might have missed some, but it takes from 1 month to 6 months for it to be completely destroyed. Because what
Wow.
happens is that people stop using it, and then
Mm,
suddenly the government still needs to fund the government, and so they have to print
yeah,
money, and that's where it goes south pretty quickly. And then people just now and look in Turkey right now, people are just throwing away their lira to get either other currencies or gold. Like they're trying to find value. And the thing is, like today, we getting taught that, oh, the US dollar is so strong. It still
here's
has
one of the things.
real inflation in the United States. This is according to shadow stats. They're using the old
Yeah.
ways of looking at inflation, 15 to 20%. So it being the strongest, it only lost 20% of its purchasing power.
Well, one of the things you got to remember is that when currencies start to collapse, they always revert to the dollar, or they always revert to the reserve.
Yeah.
And this is why it's America's motivation and it's America's interests to have countries all over the world um, their currencies to collapse.
Oh, yeah.
They won't, yeah, because they're going to then default to dollars, which then in turn strengthens the dollar, which makes everything cheaper abroad for them.
Yeah, and
Now,
then at one point,
the
like
dollar will
this
get
is
back
my
up.
belief too, that the US dollar will be the last to fall, really, because
Yeah,
everybody's going to flood into the dollars, but then everything just because the dollar is collapsing itself, like with it being like the least worst currency, or whatever you want to
yeah.
call it, the least dirty launder in the basket, and then that then it's game over when everybody floods to the dollar, it will
The
be
one
suddenly
thing I
game over.
think the one thing I think might be different, and I don't like using the phrase "it'll be different this time," but I think one of the nuances, what is it Mark Twain says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does have a tendency to rhyme.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think people are going to be more aware of this day and age is gold, silver. Like people have
Mhm.
always been aware of it, but they now through the internet have more access to it.
Yeah, and
So
if
I
you
think
just show
trying,
them the context, right? Like we're trying to educate people there, like in my channel, I always tried, I've written a few books trying to educate people about how real things in the economy, including gold and silver and a lot of other commodities, actually holds its value. Like through like
yeah.
it's just a currency that loses value.
I went to a it's called a fair, but it's basically like a rich boy's playground where everything in this place. I mean, it's very rare you see anything under £10,000, and some of the things were up there for 20, 30 million, and people were buying like crazy. This is where you can buy watches, rare vintage Rolexes, um, artwork by Banksy.
Oh,
Banksy's
yeah.
been one of the best performing artists in the last 3 or 4 years. During, I think it was 2020, or 2021. The price of his artwork on the secondary market went up 400%
That's good. He's
in
fighting
just
inflation.
well, he's Banksy's fighting inflation, yeah,
Yeah.
and he's one of the best, fiscally speaking, he's one of the best performing artists out there. But art itself has been going up on average. Blue chip art by recognized artists like Salvador Dali's and Andy Warhol, Remember when the entire market was crashing, shares were going down, bonds were going down, yields were flying high, everything was collapsing. Even gold was taking a little bit of a
Oh
hit at
yeah,
the
it
time.
always does to
And
begin with. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah. And Andy Warhol is the Marilyn sold for $200 million. It's like, what on earth goes on? That's why I like it as an asset, because art, it just has its own set of rules. It correlates marginally with gold, but it does better than gold. In fact, Banksy actually outperformed gold during COVID, which was
Because it's like, is it almost like it's semi-speculative, right? But it's like a lot of people look for historical value of, of these
yeah,
artifacts like paintings or whatever, right? Like
yeah,
it has a value in that it's like unique and all, like it's
yeah,
gold. You could just stamp gold coins, really, like when you think
yes,
about it, and then you have the same, like looking the same all the time. But with a unique piece of art, or like something that was manufactured by someone, like through with using their hands, like sculptures
mm,
or tables or wood or whatever it is,
yeah,
it has a very unique part to it, especially and then of course when they die, it becomes very for
yeah,
some certain people, it becomes very valuable. Like I actually had my great grandfather. He was a
mm,
very good wood artist. So he created a lot of wood pieces and he sold them like back in the day. But now my mom was telling me that some of his wood pieces, like they sold like, was it 10 years ago? They sold for X amount, but now they're 5 or 6 times more when they got resold by someone. So again,
oh
like
yeah,
yeah, it's that uniqueness, and of course, that adds to, and I think that's kind of the speculative value, because it really,
yeah,
like what it does, it really keeps the uniqueness, because there's only that guy that created that one thing. It's not like you
mm,
can't, like when like we talked about NFTs a bit, but it's not
yeah,
like fully unique, right? Because you can create a lot of them, for example. But
mm,
with a fine piece of art, or a fine piece,
yeah.
whatever it is, painting or whatever you create,
Don't
like
hold me
it's,
to
yeah,
this, but what I've seen is overall it goes up about 15% a year, roughly speaking. And you've got to go for your top tier artists, but you can get top tier prints, you can get multiples that have been signed by the artist. So you don't actually have to go out and buy an original Salvador Dali Persistence of Memory. You can get one of a limited edition prints that
right,
was signed by Salvador Dali, which is a lot cheaper.
yeah.
Um, and that they still hold the value because it's got the signature. And I visit one of these galleries, and they call them galleries. They're really shops. If they've got price tags, it's a shop, right? And um, but I've been going like over a year, about 18 months, and 18 months you could wander in, and there might be 20, 30 people who wander through that day. In the last couple of weeks, I've wandered into the same place, and there is sweat pouring off them. They're like, they've got paperwork, a big pile of paperwork, and they go,
Wow.
and I said, "How's business doing?" And they said, "It's too much. It's too much. With just that much people coming in, wanting to buy things, wanting." And one of the things I suspect happened is a lot of richer people have been, or wealthier people have would take realized there was a recession coming, there was going to be an aftermath
Yeah.
to COVID, and they put money into the banks. This is purely my opinion. So they took money out of assets and put it into the banks. They, instead of having the dividends accumulate, they had them income based, which means they've been, instead of putting their dividend income back into buying more shares, they've just been taking the dividend income and keeping it as cash in the bank. A lot of people I've heard through the grapevine and conversations have been moving into cash positions, and then the banks started collapsing, and they're like, I don't have,
Well,
I don't.
this, if you go into cash, I actually did research on this globally. If you
Hmm,
go into cash, I looked at the bank's consolidated financial statements. Cash is
yeah.
non-existent. It's less than 1% a lot of times of the bank's
When I say
deposit.
moving into cash, they moved it into the bank accounts.
Oh, okay. So the fake
Like,
cash.
whenever you see moving into
Yeah.
cash, I made the same mistake when I was like, I made the same mistake when I started learning this terminology. And they say moving into cash does not mean physically holding the cash in the safe. It means just moving it into a currency position, which means
Yeah.
putting it into a bank account.
Yeah.
So they might sell a property. So as you see, property starting to on the decline. So a lot of them have been selling the properties and moving it into a currency, which they keep in the bank accounts. And they
Yeah,
know
because they're
that there's
afraid, right? Like it's just fair right now, and they don't know what
it's
to
not just
do.
fear.
Yeah,
They realize there's fear in the market, and they
yeah.
realize things are going to be at a discount. So they realize that they
They want to
need to have,
position themselves to it.
yeah, they want to be able to be in a buying position. And then when the banks started collapsing, they realized they didn't have enough insurance. They were only insured for 85,000 per institution. So they had accounts with all the separate institutions. They'd used brokerage accounts, and even one of the tricks one person was using actually moved their cash into a bookmaker's account, into a betting account. Like you can do online betting in the UK,
Yeah.
and they moved their money into a betting account because it was insured.
Oh, the betting account was, yeah. That's a
Yeah,
good way to do it. Yeah.
yeah, they
When you
moved it
run
into
out of banks and credit unions to put your money in, just go to the bank. That is so
yeah,
interesting,
yeah, they moved it into there because were guaranteed like 24 hours it would be back in their accounts.
right?
And they've been moving it into all these different betting accounts. And they're like, I've still got money in the bank. What do I do? And I have this conversation every week or so with James. I don't know what to do. And so I have to tell them how gold works because and I said, right, what you want to do is buy gold coins, right, of Britannias because gold Britannias and silver Britannias, they do not have tax on them and they don't have capital gains.
Yeah.
They don't have capital gains or VAT. So you've got no sales tax on them. Please check the rules in your own country.
Yeah,
But
because if you went to Norway, stupid
hmm,
Norway has 25% tax on both gold and silver. It's like,
oh my goodness.
yeah,
We have I'm not sure about the tax on gold bars, but if you can like 100 gold Britannias, that's about 3 kilograms of gold.
yeah. We don't pay
And you
tax
could,
on gold here. Like when I buy gold and even silver, there's I think I think you just pay the GST here, which is 5%.
yeah,
So there's
what's
still a lot
GST?
less here in Canada as well.
Yeah, what's your GST?
Oh,
What's GST?
that's like a VAT, like provincial VAT
We
only.
don't have VAT.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
which is even better. So UK's at a good place where you got 0% tax on precious. A lot of it,
yeah, and we
anyways.
can even set you up with an offshore with several companies offshore who will buy and sell for you offshore.
Yeah,
So the bars, the silver bars, you have to silver's got VAT on it unless it's in the form of a legal tender.
the bullions,
So
right?
not just bullion, but if it's a legal tender coin.
Oh yeah,
So
the government minted, right?
yeah, the stupid thing. I've got a friend who actually decided he was going to walk in with £100 coin made out of silver and try and pay his fuel bill with it, and nobody's taken it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody would take that. Yeah,
I know, but nobody will take it, even though it's legal tender
yeah.
on the statute. It's legal tender, and they're obliged to take it. Nobody takes it.
So that's interesting. So it's actually like physical legal tender in the UK, like the Britannia, like your coin, like official
Yeah,
gold and silver coin, right? So that's
yeah,
interesting. I was not aware of that actually. I know that in the United States they've applied few legal tender laws in several states for gold and silver coinage to be or bullion, I think even like they included several but to make that like but that's a stupid law in itself, like legal tenders like, oh, this is officially allowed, like you can't use anything else.
well, if there wasn't a legal tender law, how would they be able to make their own?
Yeah,
See,
yeah,
this is one of the histories I'm not sure if people understand about, like the history of what how currency came about, but it was probably a fault of Britain because we would invade all these different countries and then say, right, in order for you to stay alive, you've got to pay us taxes, otherwise we'll kill you. And the way they earn their taxes is by trading their resources, their actual precious items, with the rest of the UK. They would then earn, or with the merchants, they
yeah,
then take the they then get this currency back off the merchants, which they could then pay to the British state.
yeah. And
And
it's
that's what all public services are. They're just a bribe.
yeah, yeah, 100%. No, it's
Yeah.
that's what we should look at it as. Like that's actually a good description of what that is.
When we generously give these foreign donations to countries, oh, we're pledging like like £1 million or £10 million to some
Yeah,
recently area that's been gone through famine or something like that. Well, what are they going to do with British pounds other than spend them with companies that are trading in British pounds anyway?
yeah.
They're just going to send it right back and buy items off us anyway. So it's really nothing to do with what they're trying to do is get other countries dependent on their currency.
Yeah, we'll look at what like I think it's France actually that have still like quite the control even in like over the commodities of a lot of African nations. I heard that
Yeah,
actually France have first dibs on certain commodities in certain countries that were old French colonies. And so like the still like the old empire is still there in certain ways, right? Like
well,
in
very
you know
much
the
so.
UK and like the
Yeah,
United States has very limited. Like now the US is more like they didn't have a mercantile kind of approach to things. They're more like a weaponized military approach that, you know, if you don't listen to
yeah.
us, we'll ban you from our currency system, the SWIFT system, and then we'll
Mm,
murder your leaders or just carpet bomb, you know, different things. So it's different ways. Like Genghis Khan was. This is an interesting story. Genghis Khan actually used a paper
mm,
currency that he printed like back in the day. And he actually, the way he learned about the printed currency is actually it wasn't him, it was just predecessors. But China, the Song Dynasty was the first to ever print a paper currency on a piece of paper. Now that was
yeah.
1024, and they backed it by 30% copper coinage. So they had a little bit of a backing to it. But what was interesting is after that, the who was it now? I think it was the Mongols. I forgot. I think they were called the Qin Dynasty. They
Yeah.
invaded the Sung Empire, and actually, what happened is it divided in two. But what the empire then, what the Mongols then learned is like they learned the art of printing currency and going into debt and so on from the Chinese.
Mm,
And then Genghis Khan one like this is like one, two. The third dynasty is Genghis, and he took
mm,
all of that and then he traded, and that's actually how I think Marco Polo as well, you know, he saw this, and in Europe at the time it was only gold and silver
mm.
coinage, and he could baffled him, you know, how to use it. And then of course it trickled into Sweden in the 1600s, and then it just all got all across Europe very quickly from there.
Mm. Yeah, I know, and they trickled into Europe as well. And I know they when it first hit Europe, it was the banks that started creating their own banknotes.
Yeah,
And that because the Bank of England, if you they have a video on how it all works and how they're the steady hand behind the wheel of the ship
yeah,
by just raising the interest rate a little bit, drops the inflation rate a bit, and it's it's fun stuff to watch. It really is
yeah.
hysterical. But yeah, they said it was the private banks that were initially, but I think that was just when they introduced into Europe versus I think it was China that did all the printing first. But yeah, this is
Yeah.
where the problem started.
Oh, it started with banking first of all in Venice, right? Like it was Venice, I
Yeah.
think, or that right? Like they were the first. The Italian bankers were the first ones to actually create the ledger system and then create interest and so on. Like they were the first to implement that, and then the Chinese found out, oh, like paper money, and then like shit really hit the fan pretty quickly when the paper money came out. Like and what's interesting is like we looking at like almost like a reset, like very soon, and it might be on the 1,000 year anniversary of
Tangible
paper
assets.
money.
I'm just going to
Right?
find a list of all the different things I've been. I'm trying. I made a list the other day of some of the crazy things that. That's the one. Yeah, these are some of the. Oh, is that it? No, it's not. And you might want to cut this bit out of the video, but it might take me a mo to find. But it's all the different categories of what people are doing to try and hide money. Or not
Oh,
hide it, but move it from
yeah.
currency to an item, stuff that's going to be. Um, where is it?
Yeah, I would assume there's a lot of different things that they might do, but if you don't want this in the video, we don't have to like I because I'm just recording right now, so like we could
Yeah,
just talk about that later. But if people are
yeah.
interested, like maybe James, we
What,
could
what,
we could talk about
people
this. Yeah,
what I was going to say is like people are buying. not only artwork, they're buying gold, silver, maps, ancient maps. That's another market that's
Interesting.
emerging. Beanie Babies. And this is what's happening now. People have got McDonald's toys as well. The toys and collectibles market's booming because people are just trying to hide them. Air Jordans, people are actually
Oh yeah,
starting to integrate trainers into the portfolio and
interesting. Yeah,
saying, well,
I
it's
just watched a movie
handbag.
about their Jordans yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just some of the things. Stamps have always been a good one.
Oh yeah, that's always actually been a part of like say
Collectible clothing.
yeah.
There's just so, but there's this massive demand now of people who are buying into these items and then saying, "Oh God, I need somewhere to store them." So I created the private vault site because I knew many people like me, they had something they wanted to keep out the house. They
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want to put something like that on there. But that was the whole motivation behind private vaults. And I'm also setting it up so people can actually find certain items as well, or they don't know where to go and get a Lowry, for instance, or a Banksy. So we can direct them to that.
Yeah, no, it's really good what you're doing there, and I think it's a service for the greater humanity of getting people and teaching them about how to store their money in real like in especially with gold and silver. To me, it's not even an investment. Most people look at it as an investment, but it's actually like
Mm.
wealth it's insurance on your own wealth,
Yes.
like what you saved up through your hard work through all your life. And it's an important piece, and this has been known by elites for a very long time that like they always
Mm.
have certain amount x amount of percentage of either gold or silver in the portfolio, mostly gold, when you have a lot
Yeah.
of money. But people are
But the way
looking
they're
at,
investing in that is through a paper product. They're
yeah,
actually buying it, going onto the stock market, or they're going through the
yeah,
broker and
GLD
saying,
or
well,
SLV, yeah.
yeah, a GLD SLV. But the premiums now, you can't buy gold below spot price.
All like premiums here in Canada is I think like 9 Canadian dollars right now, 8 Canadian dollars. Like they're
Yeah,
skyrocketed. And for the Silver Eagle, the American minted one, like I
yeah,
think that it's like 20 or something percent. Like it's getting pretty ridiculous
easily.
because it's getting a lot more like when premiums. So what people need to understand is, oh, they're trying to like rip you off. No, it's like actually what it means is that there's a lot less in supply and there's a lot of
Mm.
demand wanting those products. That's what it means. Because I remember, like just 5, 6 years ago, buying just usually it's like 1 or 2% a lot
Yeah.
of times the premium.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was looking around and picking up sovereigns as well. Sovereigns are a very old sort of currency. Not very old, but they're around at the 1800s they started. And you can't buy them for like less than 5%. I mean, the only people buying them for less than 5% are like professional gold buyers who will give you the cash instantly and they've got
Right.
a
Yeah.
shop on the high street. But
Yes.
you've got to factor in all their costs as well.
Yeah.
And if you go to buy them, they're like 30, 40% over spot. But they sell that because they know they will get that price.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so
I mean,
I think like we're entering the age because this is the last kind of life cycle of our currency. Like we've had now the fiat type of currency where it's backed by nothing for for quite some years, like some
mm,
countries like 40, 50 years. And so we're entering that time where, but what I think will happen is like the United States dollar, since it's still the reserve currency, will still probably
mm,
be maybe together with the euro and the yen and yuan, it might be, or even the pound sterling, it might be the ones like last standing. But then those are
mm,
gonna start faltering as well because it doesn't matter. Like our governments as well that we live under,
yeah,
like the UK, the Canadian, whatever government you live in, the Americans, like they've all over indebted themselves, so they will
mm,
collapse. And
yeah,
if people think that that won't happen, they're just blindly willful, like haven't read any type of history because every single time you can't
yeah.
get away from it, even though that, oh, it's different this time. Like, no, we figured it out this time. Like we got the thousands of economists that are at our central banks have figured it all out. Like they're
Yeah.
all the
But
masters of
don't
the.
worry, John. The IMF, if the central banks fail, the IMF has everybody's back
Yeah, they
because
could
they've
bail
decided to create a basket of junk as well
a
called the
basket of
SDR.
junk. I love that. Yeah, no, the SDR will come out as the savior to everyone. And Actually, this is interesting. They actually did SDR allocations. That's how they create they call it allocation. They're printing SDR units and then shipping it to the. But I found like actually suddenly when they did a big issue, I think it was 680 billion SDR or something, whatever it was. But then I saw it actually pop up in the United States SDR holding account, which is the Financial Stability Board. No, sorry, the Exchange Stabilization Fund. Actually, I think the Brits also have the exchange stabilization something. I forgot the last, but it's the same. Actually, the Americans learned from the Brits to have a
Mm.
currency manipulation slush fund that they use, but they hold their SDRs in there. So I saw like when they issued, it's like, oh yeah, like people don't understand like how SDRs work, but they actually just pop into the account and then now they can fractionalize it and lend it because it's a fund. It's almost like a bank. They just 10 quadruple it. And they used actually this exchange stabilization fund to bail out the banks now in the United States. They created a fund there for them to lend. The banks come in with their shitty assets, their mortgage-backed securities and treasuries,
Yeah.
and then they actually just give them whatever face value. Yeah, they don't give market value. They just give you whatever it was worth, right? So it just these mechanisms are usually just bail and just panic it. Like we got a lot more tools now than we did in the past. Like it's all a lot faster and electronic. But what you've seen too is like over the last like few decades now, crashes are starting to happen more rapidly because our technology. We're talking about AI and so on, right?
Mm.
Like instead of a 7-year cycle for debt, the business cycle
Mm.
as they call it, now it's almost like 2, 3 years because it
Mm.
happens so quickly, with our computers and
Absolutely.
everything and technology. But
Yeah.
I don't know if there's
Also,
anything else we should talk about.
a
We can go on.
decentralization of decentralization.
Yeah, let's talk quickly about that, and then I think we can wrap it up because I gotta
Well,
get going in a little bit here. But yeah, that's a very good point and very important point because that's where we should. This is the solution we're going to talk about here to all the centralization that we're seeing around the world, and let's talk about some. What do you see as a few things in decentralization that you see as good solutions for, going forward?
ooh, well, one of the problems I've talked about is the processing power of AI. It's so intensive that most people wouldn't be able to afford a system to do it well. So, but one of the things that's coming in to help is the blockchain, because if you can distribute tasks, you can input a prompt, have a computer split it out into a lot of tasks, then you can essentially distribute the burden of AI, because there's so many people with computers running that are just sort of redundant at the time, or then they can use that to process other people's tasks, and that's where blockchain is going to come in and help, where it merges with AI and helps end up running it. But there's Google's coming out with something called Web GPU at the moment, which essentially the old model of you'd buy a computer with an operating system and then you'd install your own software on it. But we've got so much software now running online that web GPU, essentially you're not going to have an operating system anymore. You're just going to press your button and it's going to be an instant web browser giving you access to different softwares.
Yeah, you're basically
And
back at the good old terminal now,
yeah,
but
it
a
won't
way
actually
better,
be a
way
terminal.
better version.
Way better, yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be something. Yeah, it's just going to be a bit like that. Um, but Web GPU, it gives you, the browser's now going to be like the operating system. And that means it's going to free up so much redundant processing power on loads of different people's computers, and they're then going to be able to integrate each browser. So you're going to be able to integrate your browser software with other people, and you'll all be processing each other's tasks, which is going to make your computer a lot more powerful.
Yeah, and then how can you create that as well, like without, like you could talk about Google GPU, but there's
Yeah,
probably open source functions of that, right?
this is
Yeah,
what's going to happen, right? It's going to be like in the way the early days of Internet Explorer. Somebody came out with a rival to it, which is going to be and there's people who are going to be building rivals of Web GPU now.
yeah,
So we're all going to be able to share processing power,
yeah.
which is going to be great for sort of the medical industry. and but there is going to be actually I've got a friend who's working on something. I think we talked about it. It's called linkyio.com, and it completely sidesteps your ISP. You can run this without even being connected to the internet. You can host your own website. And I want to show you a version of this,
Yep.
maybe later today, where we actually recreated Skype on through Linky.io, and it doesn't go through your ISP. So
Yeah, and
you're
that
directly
that
connected.
is technology that I'm very excited about, is that
Yeah,
we could create versions of the centrally controlled systems
yeah.
and then
It
have our
runs off the BitTorrent network as well. So
yeah.
it can connect whatever way. You can use your ISP if you want, but you can also connect to BitTorrent through other means. And you can actually hold a conversation over BitTorrent.
Yeah, the BitTorrent, good old BitTorrent. We
They're
almost
better
forgot
than
about
this.
BitTorrent, but then they actually issued their own crypto. Remember that? And like I don't know what got it, but
I
that's
haven't
pretty
seen
cool.
it. I concentrate on about 50 projects, right?
Yeah.
I've got 50 projects that are gonna turn me into Elon Musk, hopefully. And but there's 50 projects that I concentrate on. Litecoin, I think, is going to be a surprise everybody.
Which is
And
good. Like
starting,
I kind of like everybody's a Bitcoin maximalist, saying that it's like Bitcoin is the one and only God on this earth. And I
yeah,
kind of like to poke them a little bit, because it's like,
yeah,
hey, you guys, some people say that they're free market people, and it's like, all the market
mm,
will choose only Bitcoin, will be
yeah,
the only one. It's like, no, come on. Like, if you are in any market, I just had a discussion on an ANCAP radio that just launched on
yeah,
Twitter. And there was a guy there saying that, oh, Bitcoin will be the only money on earth, basically. And I was like, well, that's not like, you think that it's monopoly. It's like, oh yeah, it's monopoly in every country. It's like, no, I'm actually locally here. There's actually like people using other little currency tokens or whatever, transferring value around with each other.
mm.
So like, there's always competition, but
Well,
it's not.
I'm creating my own actual. It's an NFT, but it was originally I'm not sure it was going to be an NFT or an ordinal. I'm not sure if you hear about ordinals, but it's basically Satoshis, which is the smallest derivative of a Bitcoin, and you can inscribe data onto them
Oh yeah,
forever. So it's like an equivalent almost of an NFT. Most people think of the NFT as like just an image that I've bought that's on the
right,
blockchain.
right.
And it's not. It's like the reason these things have value is because you're a member of something of what backs it. Like was it Bored Ape Yacht Club? You can go on. You get to integrate with the whole Bored Ape community.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm creating my own sort of NFT, which is actually artwork that, like, I've got a Banksy at the moment, which I'm hoping to turn into an NFT. And you can buy like a thousandth of a Banksy
yeah. So
and
you could
trade
buy
it. And,
fractional ownership, which is, I'm all for that. If things
and it can
today.
generate interest as well,
Yeah.
because some of the trading fees go back towards the actual owners.
Oh yeah.
So it
Yeah.
generates an income for you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, uh, like the centralized future, because like we're fighting, the only thing that we're fighting, there's two fights going on there. It's one between centralization and decentralization, or you could call it no government versus all mighty government, right? Like
Yeah,
it's that cycle, and guys like you that are, the programmers of the world are actually like seeing. You see this firsthand. A lot of people are waking up to it, that are not in that
yeah,
world, but we're seeing that cycle is, some people call it the fourth turning, or like there's been written a lot of books on different life cycles of government or money or whatever it is, and so we're heading towards like that tipping point where like we're inched up quite far on the totalitarian side. But this
mm,
technology, potentially, if the government can't control it and it gets out of hand, which I think it hopefully will, we've seen that with a
mm,
lot of other technology. I think people are just going to ignore the government at one point. And when they ignore the government, like, what power does it really have? When people
yeah,
stop paying their taxes, that's the only power that the government has over you, is that they could
yeah,
claim taxes on every single transaction in your life, basically. When you remove that power, which could come very quickly suddenly,
yeah,
out of, because people get fed up at one point. For example, my home country, Norway. Norway is, other than Turkey, Norway is one of the top countries that have a free market black. Everybody likes to call it black market that are in academia, but
Mm,
they have the highest amount of transactions that goes outside of the actual government run economy with taxation. So it's
mm,
like, but we also have some of the highest taxes in the world. There you go, right? Like it's a
yeah,
natural, like for people, it's like what you got to remember is like when you have taxes,
yeah,
any form of tax is basically the government stealing from you. You know, like 100%
yeah.
would be pure slavery. But are you 1% slave? Are you 2% slave? Are you 30% slave? You know, like how much money do you have to give to the almighty government, right? Like it's uh,
Exactly.
yeah,
And it's not like it actually goes to a good cause anyway, because this is
yeah,
why when I said it's a bribe, I said
yeah,
earlier it's a bribe, and all the services they provide to you essentially um, just came back. It's still like the ethos of 500 years ago of imperialization. The first defense is, oh, well, in the UK we have a so-called free medical system where you can go to the hospital and they never send you a bill for it. I've been paying that since I was born. But the say, what about your doctors and nurses? We all your taxation. Have you somebody who was caught avoiding or evading tax, and they was like, oh, well, he's stealing from nurses. No, he's not. He's stealing from politicians. All those leeches
yeah,
on the other level.
yeah.
That the amount, what was it? About 50% go of your tax money goes in expenses of just running the government before it actually reaches its cause.
Oh yeah, yeah, very much so.
So you spend ten
It's
thousand
like a
dollars
lot
and
of charities, big charities today. Like most of the money that comes into a lot of the big ones is like sometimes 70-80% goes to administration. And that's what
yeah,
we're looking at here. That's exactly what you're talking about. And I think people are getting like we're at the point, like for example in Norway, 80% to 85% is calculated by some economists are actually paid back in taxes when all your transaction and purchases have been done through
yeah.
like since you got your money from the government if you have an income tax. And so that is
So
like
everything could
80%.
be
We're
80%
basically
cheaper.
close to communism. Like communism at 100%. You know, like
Yeah,
yeah. So
actually, not true. I looked at North Korea, the North Korean system. They pay like 98% tax,
okay, yeah.
and then they have to buy a
So
food
sorry about that.
parcel.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's pretty funny though. 98% tax. Yeah. So you get a little bit of freedom. You're like you have a sliver of freedom,
Yeah,
and then you go and eat the insects to survive, basically. You know.
yeah. And you get a choice of three. Well, there's like three different food parcels you can buy off the government.
Yeah, that's that. See, like do we want that? Like seriously, like that's where we're going if you keep going down this government rabbit hole that we created for ourselves. Like government is just going to get bigger and bigger. It's just a natural
Yeah,
nature of the beast that we've created. And so, like
until
at
it
one
collapses
point,
under its own
that's where you're
weight.
going to be. You're going to be at that point. And so, when is it time for people to realize that maybe we should do that? Like, you can have all the services you want around without having to pay like zero tax like what happened before 1913 when there was no income tax in the US? What happened? Oh, they still had roads, they still did things. Like they didn't have a
Yeah,
collapsed society. And then what people like this is an insane tax that I learned about in the in the UK. I think it was a
mm,
window tax.
yes,
I think it was Dominic Frisby was writing about this. What did he call his book now? It was based upon that one tax. Like you had window tax, and so everybody just shuttered the windows. Like they built in the windows. It's just the stupidity of government through history. What they're trying to get after they become bigger and bigger and more obsessive about taking bribes of all kind of sorts, as you say. So it's I think like people will realize at the point where it's like, yeah, I just like what's the point of even like working anymore where like the government is just taking all my money. Like or you like now you can't almost even move to any other jurisdiction around the world because
mm,
most of them they still have like high taxation, right? So like it's the
mm,
only way to get around that is to actually like just have the government finally collapse on itself. I think
yeah,
that's the future that we're heading towards. Like we're talking about decentralization here,
mm,
and I think it's important to see that fantastic and very exciting things happening there with like the internet side. And let's
Yeah,
talk about that more. And we need to approach other people to teach them more about these technologies, because
yeah,
I think those are the future. Because here in Canada, we're facing like with Bill C-11 that just passed, like pure like censorship on the content on the internet. Like they're looking at like you need at least, was it like 60% Canadian content on platform? Yeah.
oh my
So
God.
that's where you're going, right?
That
And
isn't very woke, is it?
no, it's there. Like it's just beyond. Like that's just like kind of North Korean leaning type of strategy, China leaning strategies, and other totalitarian regimes around the world. Like it's kind of old. It's getting old. It's been around for so many like
Hmm.
hundreds of years. I think will humans finally establish themselves as not slaves anymore? I think that's maybe AI will get us to that point, James, that we finally realize that we're free individuals and we don't need any form
Well,
of authority over us, really.
yeah, well, there's projects out there out to replace the voting systems now. I think a lot the government will be hit very, very hard. This brings me on to another point actually, because in the UK at the moment we have a de facto sort of general strike. That there's so many strikes happening all at once. It's almost like everybody's on strike, and like the railways, these guys are on pretty good pay, and they're still getting and they're still going on strike again because the unions know that that's why they always gravitate towards monopoly
Yeah.
industries. And they're just like, well, if everyone else is going on strike, maybe we can get a few quid extra, you know.
Hmm.
And that's what it's been about. And they're not underpaid. They just striking because they can and they think it's a good opportunity for.
Well, at one
But
point, you might have what happened in Venezuela, where they're trying to raise minimum wage by 5,000, 10,000% at a time.
exactly. And I think people are getting fed up of all the strikes because the taxes aren't going down, the taxes are going up.
Yeah, and you're
And
getting
then
less and less service for the taxes.
and you're getting less and less
Yeah.
service. So the only solution is see what we can replace, see people we can replace with AI. Like I genuinely think a lot of the tax agents and tax authorities out there, what is it in America? It's not the Inland Revenue, it's the Revenue Service or something in
The IRS, IRS, yeah.
IRS. That's the one in
Yeah.
America. I don't think there's going to be like a handful of them, maybe a couple of hundred instead of tens of thousands, because they will just be replaced by AI easily.
Yeah. And it could be extremely localized. And you could track, like if you want government, you could track and trace on the blockchain the actual like where they're going and then spending their money. You know, like when you
Mm.
pay taxes today, you have literally no idea what that money has actually gone to. Well, if it goes to like a whole bunch of money to pay this one guy at the top, you know,
Yeah.
people will get pissed off pretty quickly, and then that will turn it. Yeah. So,
What was it? Bernie Sanders went on Twitter and said 5% of Musk's wealth could eradicate hunger in the world. And Elon Musk responded, "You tell if you do it transparently, I'll sell 5% of Tesla now."
yeah, exactly. No, it's pretty funny like how we reverted back to almost like feudalism when you think about it. Like our political systems today are very similar to like feudalist system where
Oh yeah,
they think that they're just smarter than us, they're an overlord. You got to remember the feudalist system in itself actually got created that one guy is like, hey, I'm the representative of God. And I
yeah,
will, like that's how it kind of like started, right? Like when you think about way back when it all this started, is that one smart guy be like, hey, I'm gonna play the peasants and control them, and so I think like with today's technology, like there's going to be people that are more enslaved than ever with their thoughts and minds because they went through the whole system and they continue to watch the system. But then there's
mm,
going to be a lot of us that are actually removing ourselves completely out of that system almost in a way that we are self-thinkers, we can think for ourselves, we are not reliant on any government, and so
mm,
on. So I think there's going to be a breakaway, almost civilization like that. Meanwhile, you're going to have the totalitarian tyranny trying to gain power, but with today's technologies and so on, it's going to be harder and harder to control anybody anymore. And so I think,
absolutely.
yeah, I think like what we're going to see is a maybe a renaissance. Let's hope for that. Let's look at the positive side. And
I'm hearing that word a lot more. I'm hearing the word renaissance a lot more. I think eventually, I don't know how it's all going to play out or how long it's going to take, but I do think gold and silver are going to be re-established as the foundation of our monetary system.
they would have like, how are they gonna even like be able to like
Like
governments
there was
might,
a
yeah,
gold-backed cryptocurrency called Pax Gold,
yeah.
and they didn't do anything wrong. They matched every ounce to a token. Right, they had several hundred ounces in a vault. It was all transparent, audited. Everything was done great, and you can track if they were generating extra tokens. You can, and they made it very transparent. But they got investigated by the SEC for trading an unregistered security. Was
Of course.
anybody hurt? Was anybody either hurt or at risk?
Yeah,
No, but they still got investigated.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
competition.
yeah, exactly. But when the 2008 housing crisis and the mortgage crisis kicked in, what was it? Only one person ever saw jail time.
Oh, was there anybody? I don't think there were
One
even.
person, I believe, got sent to jail from
Yeah,
Credit Suisse.
yeah. Yeah, one person out of the thousands of employees that know very well what's going on, what
Yeah.
they did. It's like I just interviewed a lady about that, and like she was a journalist during that whole period, and the corruption was rampant. Like everybody was just at one point there was no collateral left, so they created up fake collateral, derivative collateral that being. And that you don't hear about that on the Wolf of Wall Street or any of those movies, right? Like the what was it
No,
called, the Big Short, right? Like you don't hear
yeah,
the details of the actual scam that was going on. But now they're at it again. They're trying to
yeah.
it's a cycle. They're trying to now derivativize everything, and like so they're creating derivatives on derivatives on derivatives on derivatives. And where is that going to end up? In pure poverty for the individual, you
What
know.
is the derivative market at the moment? Last I heard, it was 5 quadrillion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's just immense and massive. Like when you count all of them, like the official numbers are just 600 trillion. But you got to remember,
Mm,
there's so many different layers of derivative. Like the financial system is such a elaborate and technical scam now that it's hard to find ownership of anything anymore. No, but that's
mm,
why you get the crazy collapses when they fall apart because nobody knows who owns what anymore. And of course, that blockchain can say solve that
mm.
as well, right? Like there's a lot of like everybody thinks that blockchain is on the way out, but it's such a great technology to track and trace good things. Like if you
I've,
use it,
I've heard this 4 times now. I remember when blockchain was a 400, Bitcoin was a $400, and people were like, "What is it?" It's like it's just a digit. Essentially, it's just an entry on a ledger or like a spreadsheet. It's
yeah,
just you're buying a little entry on a spreadsheet. Why would anyone buy that? And I said, "Well, why do you use currency? Because it's exactly the same thing."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
100%.
just an entry on the Bank of England ledger, except there's a bit of a difference. They keep theirs on a computer at the central bank, except this ledger's split up all over the world
Yeah, and
and can never
millions,
really be picked
probably
up.
millions upon millions of different, copies of it.
Yeah, and with the bank credit as well. I mean, we've never really talked about bank credit, but
Yeah,
bank credit is they take that on deposit, and then that's lent to another bank and another bank and another bank. That's
yeah,
one very long chain. That is just a absolute mess.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
when if anything happens to the currency, in fact, it doesn't take even other countries their currencies collapse and they get into the same mess. That's just going to spread like wildfire throughout the world.
Oh yeah, like what you gotta remember is like we got billionaire CEO bankers, and all they're
Mm,
supposed to do is provide a service. They're not
mm,
supposed to financialize everything. Like standard banking is basically providing savings and like savings and then maybe loaning it out. Like that's standard of banking, but that doesn't exist. They combine the investment bank and
mm.
the savings and loan banks, and now they're just basically just take, and they don't even take your asset anymore. They just lend a whole bunch of money from each other. They go and buy all these exotic, derivatives and assets. Like so, it's just become like the the pure financialization, nobody cares about being an electrician anymore, or farmer, or actually doing things that the economy really needs to survive.
Yeah.
Like nobody gives a crap about those anymore. But that's gonna really be detrimental to to civilization. Is that we
Yeah.
still, like we talk about AI and everything, but we still need the people like actually doing stuff. We can't replace them all with robots.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I've actually I used AI the other week to generate me a website template, and then managed to convert it into a WordPress theme. And in about 2 or 3 minutes, I had a fully functional WordPress theme. And you can even take the AI engine's um, copy software, and then um, release it as your own version, or release it as an AI version. I'm not sure what the legality on it is, um,
Yeah,
but
whatever
there's
IP.
building,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever IP laws. But a lot of software now you could probably just get for free. If you just copied it, it's an AI copy.
Yeah, because
So
like the whole software industry, like Microsoft and others that, Oracle or whoever creates those big softwares, IBM, like they're
yeah,
gonna get devastated, hopefully. Like they have so
yeah,
much power when you think about it. Like I remember like I installed the, point of sale systems, and then the
mm,
amount of money it costs for some of these POSs is just ridiculous. It's like $7,000. Meanwhile, like you could probably, like if you did it over, like created open source thing, like you could do it for $50, $100.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now with Arduino as well. I mean, imagine combining. Um, it's not going to be long, and they're probably already doing this. I haven't heard anything, but getting AI to create um, electrical circuit boards and the plans for them.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking. Like even the CAD drawing, like all that stuff, like that could be so much official. And you could maybe the AI could find some kind of crazy way of even more officialize. Like making it more
Mm,
efficient, the circuit boards. The way maybe even find a revolution where it could create like hundreds of layers. I know that they do
mm.
that in processors and stuff, but like they could the things that could happen. But like when we hit that plateau, um, the question is though, let's finish on this, James.
Oh yeah,
Let's
we could talk more.
yeah, let's
Well, we could
because
cover
I think we should
conversation.
pick up our conversation. There's so much to talk about and so much important things, but what I think we should finish on is like where do we see the next 10 years? Like, do we see it turning into a totalitarian dystopian place? Or like we said a lot of, bright things that we could probably work on happening, but we need people like us talking about the
Yeah.
good things that could come out of all these things. Because if we do let the wrong people get it, they'll use it for very nefarious purposes, and especially the
Mm.
government, they are just drilling at AI. And so where do you think, like let's end on the where do you think here will be in the next, like let's say 10 years? Like I know it's hard to predict anything, and
Yeah,
especially
I like
now
to
with
go in
this.
bunches of five, right? Because it's sort of every five
Sure,
years.
let's do five.
Yeah. So 5 years, I think we're going to see a massive amount of AI in medical research and diagnosing things we didn't even know were a disease and deficiencies, and it's going to really narrow down the cause of a lot of things. We're going to if we there's going to be a couple of if we start having driverless vehicles, for instance, they become mainstream rather than something to experiment with. We're going to have AI planning and driving us around everywhere. I think we'll start to see the decline of people having their own cars, and you might even have Uber, AI Uber. They're going to be one of the first companies to integrate driverless vehicles.
Yeah, so you'll
You know,
you'll own nothing and be happy. Is that what you're saying?
and no, I think you are.
Ah,
I think it
yeah.
depends how people react, right? I think inequality will be at a more of an extreme. Like, I'm not really a campaigner, but I do recognize the effect of inequality. And I think there'll be a much more extreme, but it'll be much more localized. So we'll be
Interesting.
seeing it on our own doorstep, because all these people who spent their life honing a craft just to be got rid of by an AI system,
Right, right.
then yeah, we're going to see a lot less managers and things like that. Why do,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, maybe even less CEOs as well. Why not have a CEO might be able to run several companies at once?
Well, I could just have the
Um,
computer run the whole company, right? Like
yeah,
get rid of
or
all the management.
yeah, I seriously, like if you look at the way things are going,
Yeah,
it's
no.
only keeping the really talented workers and the best workers and shortening things down in diagnostics, not just medical diagnostics, but machine diagnostics as well. We'll see it integrated into every car, every product, um, and every product and service in the world is going to use AI. I mean, they've been using AI in banks for quite a while to analyze people when they're lying on the phone. Like they have but I think there's going to be a mass of people who just can't get a job because the skills are no longer going to be needed.
The so-called useless eaters,
Yeah,
guys talked about it, like Noel Harari and like thinkers. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think there's going to be a mass unemployment in the financial sector because most of those people are just going to lose their jobs. There's going to be no need for them.
You just need Jamie Dimon could just sit there and have his AI computer now, and you just don't need those
Yeah,
peasant bankers anymore.
the bankers are going to be the new peasants because I
Yeah,
mean, in the UK, they're closing down a lot of banks. They don't need them at the store. They
yeah.
don't need them at, and a lot of the back office workers, administration, that's not going to be needed anymore.
You have to get rid of
Um,
cash, like all the transportation needs, all the management
mm,
around that, like all that disappears.
yeah.
Yeah, there's
If you're
but
working
this is
in any
yeah.
tax accountants, a lot of them are going to be out of business. The IRS, I don't think we're going to have an IRS or an Inland Revenue Service, or it'd be a very small handful of them. And I mean, maybe 150. It'd be like the sort of size of the central bank, really. And that'll be it. They'll just be completely wiped out. But that's been going on. That's been in the works for a long while. Especially if you have the combination of a digital bank currency and AI.
Right.
Insurance industries, they will have a mass exodus of employees. They're going to get. It's going to be like an Elon Musk moment where he goes into Twitter and fires 95% of the workers. I can imagine 95% of these jobs are just going to disappear.
Yeah, the only jobs that are really left then is like blue collar jobs, like actually like hands-on jobs
Yeah.
that is hard
I
to
think
replace.
coders and programmers are going to be needed because there's always going to be need for people who understand what's going on under the hood.
Yeah,
And
and
then
guys like me that run the wires for all of that, like yeah,
yes,
you
running the
just
wires.
can't replace the you can't replace
No,
me with a robot yet, like, but who knows? Maybe we'll all be
I
replaced.
don't. I think there's going to be a last one to go. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyone who can work with the hands
yeah.
is going to. No, I think it's going to rapidly affect programming because the
Oh yeah.
programmers are going to be expected. It's no longer we want you typing raw code. We expect you to be able to use AI to get much larger amounts of work done.
Yeah, so there will even be a hit there because like the guys that are smarter that knows how to leverage themselves, basically,
Yeah,
that's what you're saying, right? Like
yeah.
you and use that artificial intelligence. They are the ones that probably will survive. So there's going to be a lot less. Yeah, the uh, just the amount like of that on top of the automation, because I see automation happening like
Mm.
here in Manitoba where I live, like it's very behind, like things that happened in Norway like 15 years ago are just coming here, so it's pretty funny how it works. But I think like yeah,
I think 95% of the financial sector jobs are going to go, and 75% of government jobs are going to go.
I like it. But I don't like the CBDC. We were actually, this is just prediction, right? Like, because this is what
Just a
we see.
prediction.
This is not what we want exactly, right? But this
And
is,
that's
yeah, just, yeah,
25% too short for me, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I don't
Zero is the best when it comes to government. I totally agree on that. Like, is there anything else that you could think of that, or should we could let's wrap it up then.
Yeah,
Let's
we need
wrap
to
it.
wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up with you
For
telling
those of you
where
who got this
everybody
far on the podcast,
could go and
congratulations.
yeah, let's have everybody know what you do and how to find whatever you do, like your content, your websites, and so on, where
Yeah,
people
I've
can find
got
more
my
about
main
you.
one is privatevaults.co.uk. Privatevaults.co.uk. Did I say that correctly? And I've got my American one is the private-vaults.com. And if they want to contact me, it's james at privatevaults.co.uk.
Fantastic, James. It's been a pleasure to having you on, and
Oh, it's been
we'll
an
kick
absolute
this.
pleasure.
Yeah, we'll have this conversation and keep it going because there's so much interesting insights you have that you know, a lot of people have no clue what's going on, especially on your side because there's so much happening there right now. So I really appreciate you taking the time, James.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted
And
to give a plug to my friend who's creating
please,
Linky.com, but it's a completely decentralized internet that he's creating, and you just download a package off and run it in your browser, and you can share files, anything, all through BitTorrent, and it's a completely decentralized internet.
no,
So it's
yeah,
I think the reason I'm working with him, I'm not even charging. I'm just so fast. I actually own part of the company. I
yeah,
gave him like $10,000 and said I want part of it. He said how much? He says okay. I said 1%, and he goes okay.
yeah. No, it's
But yeah, I
fantastic.
think that's going to be
It's
massive.
projects like that that makes me excited. You know, like guys
Yeah,
that actually care about getting rid of control grids. I really like that. So, but again, I really appreciate you being on, James,
it's been an absolute
and thanks
pleasure,
for
John.
coming on. We'll talk soon.